Welcome to Divisive Issues, the foul-mouthed, spoiler-filled comic book podcast where two fans and two non-fans talk about controversial or noteworthy comic books. I'm Ryan.
I'm Sly.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Daryl.
And we're here for the final part of Flash Fury, my love letter to the Flash's villains.
Wow, it came and went just like the Flash did in our hearts.
Yeah, it came in our hearts.
It came in our hearts, and then left, and then came back, and then another one, and then there's another one.
but
like all the different Flashes I'm referencing here.
Yeah, we're going through three different Flashes spoilers.
Kind of. So we are going to be selecting, and this is a little non-linear from last time because there's going to be, it's mostly going to be Jeff Johns. There's going to be one Mark Waid issue in here. But
we're doing a bunch of origin stories, so we're going to jump around from different origin stories.
Yes.
Pretty much.
So some of it will be before the Blitz stuff we talked about, some of it after, but it's mostly just like Rogue backstory stuff.
Yeah, what's interesting about this time is that Flash plays a very, very small role in this.
He doesn't show up in any of these issues.
He shows up in one issue.
Oh yeah, he shows up in one issue.
That's
That's the only one that's not really a Rogue's issue. It's just more continuity filling stuff.
Yeah.
And kind of stuff.
So we're going to be, for the first batch, we're going to be covering issues 182, 190, 212, and 218 from Wally's run, written by Jeff Johns. The art, there's lots of different artists. Some of it's Scott Collins, some of it's some fill-in artists that I don't know off the top of my head. Sorry, guys, you could look it up.
It's a different artist from every fucking issue we're doing, and one issue has multiple artists in it, so we'll take forever just to install different artists.
Yeah. So we're going to open with 182, which is the Captain Cold issue. If the listeners don't know Captain Cold, he's the guy with the weird blue little goggles and the big parka.
He's Flash's version of Mr. Freeze, even though I think Cold came first.
Probably.
Or he's Iceman from Mega Man 1, because he looks just like him.
But Captain Cold definitely came before Mega Man 1.
Alright, Iceman is Captain Cold, I guess.
I'm not
you
sure.
You learn something new every day.
I mean, it's not. He has a parka on. He's cold. It's not that hard of a concept.
No, but Mega Man, Iceman has the exact same colors.
And the glass?
Blue. Oh my god, light blue.
He doesn't have the
crazy.
glasses, but he has the white. Yeah. Anyway, that's not important.
Okay, so after I looked it up, Captain Cold predates Mr. Freeze.
Oh, thank God you confirmed that.
Yeah. And Captain Cold is.
I thought you were going to say he predates Iceman.
Also that. And Captain
Iceman, the X-Men predates all of them. I don't know.
No,
I'm making that up.
I don't know. That's
I don't know shit
Captain
about
Cold
comics.
predates Iceman as well.
Okay. Phil's the comic book noob here.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck.
And Captain Cold is an old, long-term Flash villain. He debuted in Barry Allen's second appearance before he even had his own book when he was in Showcase, and he's one of the oldest Silver Age villains. I think the only Silver Age villain older is the Turtle, the first Flash villain.
Really?
Yeah.
That was his first villain?
Yeah. Fun fact: the Turtle is played by the Chief in the Flash TV show from Battlestar Galactica.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know if I got far enough to see the Turtle.
The Flash, who's the fastest man ever, his main villain is a slow guy.
Not the main villain. The Turtle.
Okay,
I don't know. Anyone would say the Turtle is his main villain. So anyway, it opens with Captain Cold in Keystone City, and this is around, I mentioned this last time, this is around when Jeff Johns was reintroducing the Rogues as major parts of the Flash's book.
This is in between what we read last time, right? When you introduced Hunter Zolomon, and then when Hunter Zolomon became Zoom?
Yeah,
Okay.
So the way these were framed a lot is throughout the book, you would have Hunter poring over the files to psychoanalyze the Rogues and to do that profiling, and he used that as a framing device to often have these one-off issues where it's these are their profiles. So a lot of them are called Rogue profiles. You know,
one of the things I thought when I saw Hunter Zolomon, it was at first I'm okay, either they're completely okay with him just being Zoom for a little bit of something, but then I was okay, this is probably in between them, which makes the Hunter Zolomon profile of him becoming Zoom a lot more cooler if these are the episodes you get in between where it's what's everyone's origin, and then Zolomon at the end is listen to my origin, because then you're oh shit, he's gonna become a villain.
Yeah, so in this trade, for example, the Rogues trade, there's the Grodd issue, there's that first Peekaboo story that we talked about, there's the story of the the radioactive man, whatever his name was, Fallout, like going to visit his family. So like he was doing a lot of these one-off villain spotlight issues.
Mm-hmm.
So it opens with Captain Cold breaking into a building with his ice gun, just like beating the hell out of people. And it's like, I vandalize, I assault, I steal. That's what I do. Do I murder? Do I murder? Sometimes, but only under 2 sets of circumstances. 1, if it's kill or be killed, and 2, if I'm after good old-fashioned vengeance. Payback, eye for an eye. Today's payback day. Today, I'm on the hunt. Today, I'm a murderer.
And this is kind of like the lobby scene from Matrix, where he just runs
Yes.
in and guns blazing and freezing everyone.
I mean, it's like that scene in that he's in a lobby.
I know, these scenes are a lot of these origin stories are to show how badass the rogues are.
Yeah.
And it's like it just Captain Cold kicking the shit out of people.
And the style is always this like narration heavy, self-reflection of the character, being like, how did I get to where I am?
You're probably wondering how I got in this situation.
Right.
Yeah,
And like
it's
it's a scene of it's always starting with the scene of them kicking ass, and then it goes back to their fucked up childhood almost always.
Yes.
And this is one of those things that I
Always.
was like, I actually really liked reading these. I'm like, these are really cool. But at the same time, what kept playing in my head was us making fun of how they rebooted all these heroes, where they're like, he was a guy who played with yo-yos, but now he burned his family alive, he killed his sister. It's like, they do a lot of that where these are obviously characters that were not dark, just based on their outfits and powers.
Yeah.
And then they're all from very abusive households. They murder their family.
They all have a tragic backstory, I would say. Or they all have some misfortune that is visited upon them that kind of pushes them down this path.
That's actually why I don't like these particular origin stories that much, because I don't think it gels that dichotomy well enough of the goofy costumes and the very dark, like overly dark backstories.
Mhm.
And I don't feel it connects their superior theme to their backstories well enough. Like Captain Cold, the only cold part of his backstory is his grandpa owned an ice cream truck, and his dad beat him, so he had to learn to be cold on the inside.
I kind of like the more subtle touch of that, though, rather than just...
I was frozen in an ice cave, and then
Yeah.
But I don't view it as a subtle touch, though, because it is very over the top. Like in his backstory, his dad is a complete fucking hopeless drunk. He breaks his mom's wrist.
He's abusive to Captain Cold. Yeah, and he's abusive to
says
Captain Cold's little sister.
He says, "Dad, I love you, Dad," and like that's he interrupts his dad beating the shit out of his mom to say that, just so they can set up the scene where Dad says, "You can't love me, can't love anyone." It felt. I don't think it's that's the problem. I don't think it's subtle. It's subtle enough to, I don't think it's subtle, but it doesn't. It's not blunt enough to have like the themes be obvious, but it's not subtle. It's not really subtle at all in terms of like what events are happening.
Yeah,
So the thing that I really like specifically about the Captain Cold issue is like Sly was saying, like the main first scene that we have, and it's not like he doesn't interrupt his dad beating his mom. What happens is it says
his
that
mom leaves. His mom leaves, and then he says, "I love you." Like if you're like
okay, hold on.
If you're a kid, you're not gonna when your dad just broke your mom's wrist. You're gonna fucking hide. You're not gonna come to him and saying, "Dad, I love you, Dad." Right after that.
Not after he does this to you.
So,
I know, like
I
it
didn't.
seems like it's the first time he ever experienced this or something, but it just feels like in one page he needed to get through all these points about Captain Cold's backstory.
So yeah, I take it more as like vignettes of different moments.
Yeah.
Personally, I didn't take it as like immediately, and I think it's supposed to be a direct dichotomy where
He's drinking the same vodka that he was drinking as he was yelling at the wife.
but they're all over everywhere. I think he's just.
I mean, not on this first page. Like I side with Sly on at least the first page. It's all like the same series of events, because at the very last panel, it's the mom still running away after she said, "I hate you," which
I didn't
prompts
notice that.
the son to say, "Dad, I love you," and then the dad's like, "Never."
And
say that.
even if that wasn't there, the fact that they have these are very purposely colored. So to time jump without having any clear time jump, that would still be a flaw for me.
Okay, so it's not a time jump. I was wrong. I misread it.
Okay.
But anyway, so I think Daryl hit it there. Where the things I just want to mention that we're skipping over is that his father was a cop that was on disability because he was taken off at a routine traffic stop. There was a mishap, and his dad's partner was killed, and he was shot in the arm. And it was later revealed that his father was drunk. He was drunk on the job at the time, and that's why they kicked him off the force. I like this setup a lot for Captain Cold, because Captain Cold is basically a gang leader. Like the rogues are just like this gang, and he establishes that like he hates cops, which he mentions a few different times, and he also hates the like irresponsibility of the like drunk on the job, doesn't take the job seriously. And I think what Daryl mentioned I really like is that the mom is like, I hate you, and he says, no, well, Dad, I love you, like I'm not gonna run away, because he's like, I think he's 8 at the time or something like that. And that's when the dad like beats the hell out of him, and he's like, don't tell anybody that, like don't, you know. And I feel like having this like drunk, washed out cop, like abusive figure, that to me makes it works with the characterization of this gang leader that's taking in other rogues that have these fucked up childhoods. Like that really works for me on why they would want to work within their own moral code, their own like lawful evil code, but still hate the system that establishes them. Because like he's the victim of this, like this cop was drunk and got somebody killed, and he's still on full disability, you know, like it's not like it's the system that fucks over this family. And and I like that as motivation for the leader of a gang of supervillains.
I agree, and I think I was thinking
the dad is cartoonishly evil though. Like
I don't know, a cop that beats his family is not a cartoonish thing. It's a thing that happens all the time.
I know, no, but there is no like, and this is like, cops do beat their family, and there is. That's why I praise the ultimate abuse stuff, and I'm criticizing this because. Even in the most fucked up family, you have fucked up love relationships going on there, and this is a problem with the truncated storytelling. That's why it doesn't work for me at all to tell this in such a fast way. It makes it feel less impactful for me because it feels less believable to me to have. If you didn't say "Dad, I love you, Dad," you wouldn't have that dichotomy of the fact that Dad and there's no signs of the dad ever showing any compassion even before or after.
I mean, I don't understand why the dad has to. Some people don't.
Yeah, some people are just really fucked up and just alcoholics.
Yeah, I know that, but when I say love, I don't mean the dad has to show it to his son. I'm saying that the dad can be fucked up, but like there's usually a reason why he would stay, and that one line, "I love you, Dad," that like fills that whole entire gap for me. In
I mean,
explaining
he stays
why.
because he's 8. That's
I
it.
know, but no, but then he leaves. Then he leaves. Why is this?
He leaves. He goes.
He leaves when he's old enough to leave.
Yeah. Like,
But then, like, why doesn't he go to police or anything?
I mean, he was a cop.
I also, that's a good point too. I also think that you're just looking for more reasons to be like that. This is kind of unbelievable, rather than just like you wish this was more fleshed out, rather than just summarized in 3 pages.
The best way to estimate feelings now that I think about it. This feels like a classic Golden Age origin story where in like one page, a bat will fly to his window, and Batman will say, "Oh, I bet that's why I'll become Batman." And that never felt satisfying for me as an origin story, and this doesn't feel as satisfying the same way because it feels too fast for me.
So anyway, on the next page.
So anyway, I was explaining my feelings, and Ryan's like, "Anyway, fuck you."
No, in direct contrast to what Sly's saying about the lack of love in this family dynamic, on the next page we meet his grandfather, who does show a lot of affection and actually stands up for the kids, and is a positive role model in their life, and is one of the reasons why they don't leave right away. And he takes.
No, but he stays after the grandpa dies. Anyway.
Yeah, he dies at 12. When Captain Cold turns 12.
Yeah, and then
they like, then again, since they don't explain the dynamic here, he just comes in, beats the shit out of his son, and he takes the kids for the rest of the day. But they don't really explain like why he doesn't do much more to fucking clean up his son.
I mean, they do. They say with his ailing health, I guess he didn't think there was much he could do other than this.
Just beat the shit out of his son, and just, like, why couldn't he adopt the kids at least?
Because he was dying.
He was dying.
Because he dies like 3 years later.
I don't know. This house is this is what I'm talking about, because this house is completely fucked up. It's a trailer park like house. All dishes aren't done. The wife just immediately ran out 5 seconds ago for arm broken. Like, even if you're dying, I think you'll try to find some kind of effort to at least find a better home.
Yeah, it's like for me, I don't disagree with like that. There is that kind of like the a little bit of dissonance there where it's like this guy is really good, but like he doesn't get them out. But again, this stuff is so briefly glossed over. Like the grandpa's introduced on the same page he dies, so I'm not like too worried about the mechanics of it.
That's why I don't like it, because it is too fast. Like,
yeah.
So it feels like whenever me and Ryan say like, "Oh, this character goes on to be a drug dealer," and it's really cool. This is what these origin stories feel like to me. Like, this feels like reading the comic equivalent of us saying that to you guys.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I find like this this dynamic of like we are poor and stuck in this like shitty environment and this cycle of violence, and like the small people that we have that are helping us, even they're like still like they can't do enough because like he delivers ice. It's not like he has enough money for like any sort of legal process to like adopt these kids just for him to immediately die. Like, I don't know, this reads true to me of like people that are stuck in shitty situations that like they don't have the agency to get out themselves. Like if this guy was like super rich and was like coming in to save the day, it would be, I think, a little different. But I don't know, like I see houses like this every day.
I think it'd be more interesting. I just think it'd be much more fleshed out.
Yeah, you're just on opposite ends where Ryan buys into stories like quicker, whereas I think you want that more long-term payoff. And
this reads really, really realistic to me. Like I see family dynamics in houses like this literally every single day at my job, and like it's not that easy to just like go somewhere better or have somebody save you.
It's like how they mentioned in the beginning where it's like the mom kept coming back, and it's real easy to look and be like, well, why'd she keep coming back if he's so abusive? But it's like you're not in a position to really judge what it's like.
But that's why I praise Ultimates, because Ultimates, I'm the weird guy who likes origin stories, so that's why I praised Ultimates, because Ultimates I felt showed both dynamics of abusive. But this is 2 pages of a comic too, and I feel like it's not enough to really it doesn't feel punchy enough to be this brief, and it doesn't feel clever enough to explain Captain Cold's backstory for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, I don't agree, but I said why.
I know.
So
I'm just giving my thoughts out there, and we can.
Yeah,
that's fair.
And then just to aside from Heatwave, I feel about this way for most of the villains going forward. Just so I don't have to repeat this every time.
Yeah.
Okay. So
one thing I liked about them was that, regardless of the specific origins, because I was kind of thinking about what we were talking about, how this is a very dark. They all have very dark backstories to become like, you know, the Mirror Master and stuff like that. Like just they're goofy-ish personas. But I was also thinking like it's first of all, it's a way for them to like kind of channel their either neuroses or trauma or whatever. Yeah. And second, like, yeah, it's weird to me to like put on a goofy eye goggles and go freeze people, but in a world where supervillains do exist, I think many people actually would channel that way, because it's not actually in this world, it's not weird to put on a cape and like go
especially as a manifestation of a lost childhood. I feel like dressing up and playing supervillain makes sense to me.
In our world,
plus again, the superheroes are doing the same thing, so you get to see these people lauded and appreciated by society dressing up in spandex.
And I always looked at the rogues' uniforms as an extension of like gang colors, of like they do this intentionally to identify and like to, like I think later on in the issue, Captain Cold talks about how he did it to get the attention of the Flash, because the Flash was this authority figure that he wanted to beat up because he couldn't beat up his dad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But meanwhile, while we're getting
it's interesting that this is because like there's interesting stuff that takes people out of it. Because a bad origin story takes me out of it more than anything else. But like I'm comparing this to Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze, I think, does it perfectly. It connects his suit directly to his backstory, and it connects a very blunt, cold theme throughout, obviously, and a grander than life scale. And obviously, it's not what this is going for. But
I don't want the rogues to be like that for the most part. But these are gadgets that they use at work. They're not like
I know. I'm saying yes. I know it's not that, right? I'm saying that. I'm saying it doesn't. Then I would like to go in the opposite direction, go completely gritty, and not have the colorful costumes. But it's trying to have both ways. It doesn't connect.
It's what we
like when you brought up the missing childhood. If that had been mentioned, I would be like, okay, I buy it. But that's not mentioned at all. It doesn't feel like it makes sense why he puts on a colorful costume for me.
I think it gets back to, again, what we had mentioned earlier about the other Flash stuff, where it's about, like, Flash straddling that line between both the campiness and the grit of real life, where you got this guy dressing up in this costume, but at the same time having an abusive alcoholic father. And it's whether or not you buy into, like, you like those being, like, blended together, kind of like Ryan does.
Yeah. So anyway, while we're getting the backstory, we're getting cuts of Captain Cold's like current, the in media res mission, like we said, where the main thing was earlier in Flash during Mark Waid's run, this like wannabe Captain Cold named Chilblain showed up and killed Captain Cold's sister, who was also
Chilblain.
yeah, was also part of like in all the backstory stuff. You have like him and his sister, you know, trying to be there for each other, and then he leaves and basically like goes to join like some criminals or whatever, and he leaves her behind because she's younger with her dad, and she's like, I want to come with you, and he's like, no, you shouldn't get involved with these people, but like, you know, you have a passion for ice skating, do that instead. And he basically, like, he says, like, I wanted to believe that she'd be fine. I convinced myself maybe if I was out of the picture my dad would change, but really people don't change. And like and then it shows like his first job. They had these silly glasses that you know, stopped the glare from gunfire and had police fans in them. And he said like his first bank robbery, he was just a guy in like, you know, a bunch of goons, and they didn't even know what happened. They got caught by the Flash, and it was just a blur, and they were just there.
Had I known Barry Allen was really a cop, I would have hated him even more. I like that line.
Yeah, I think I think that's really cool. And while he's in prison, he's doing lots of research, and he's like, you know, I was pretty smart, but, you know, society, like, didn't give a shit about me. So he invents this cold gun, and then they do a bunch of, like, sci-fi bullshit about, like, cyclotrons or whatever.
Yeah. And in prison, he's able to figure out how to make a cold gun. Which...
I mean, in the DC universe, you have to buy that some people could come up with these things. Like,
It's just, to me, it's always crazy that like everyone's a weapons engineer. Like,
it's one of those things. Like until this point in the story, it was a completely like a realistic story. Then all of a sudden, he's like, I can create a cold gun.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like, that's one of those things that like, because the original Mirror Master just found his tech in the '60s, and like if in the Silver Age, Captain Cold made it, I would. If people were like huge Captain Cold fans, I feel like it would do a disservice to the character to be like, actually, he didn't make it, he just found it. Like, I think like if people like that the villain came up with their own tech instead of just being gifted like with this like magic power.
But it's impressive to be able to reverse engineer this tech. Like it would still be really impressive. If you tried to make him a blue collar criminal, it would still be really, really impressive to make him a criminal can reverse engineer this tech.
Well, I mean, he did steal the blueprints for the weapons, so it is that. So
I mean, but it's still different than he finds like a piece of equipment and reverses it. That's what was in the Flash TV show, and I think that works better.
Yeah, but I mean, like, he stole the blueprints and just came up with the way to power it.
But having blueprints is so much more different than actually creating a device from scratch. Like, it is having a working prototype in your hands. Like, it's so different.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but I don't like necessarily get why that has to be what happened.
I know, but it just again,
it's a minor detail.
It's hurting the blue collar feel for me to make him that smart in prison.
Okay, so at this point, then it like is fast forwarding through a lot that like he fought the Flash a lot and he teamed up with the Rogues, and at one point now it's fast forwarding ahead to like the 70s when Golden Glider, which was his sister, became a Rogue as well. That she was dating the Top, and she also wanted she was looking for revenge like at the system, just like him. And we get like some nice moments where Captain Cold is like, I'm sorry I left, and she's like, but we're out now, that's all that matters, like we're safe, we're away from him. And they talk about like after Barry died, Wally became the Flash, and they kind of didn't care as much about being in the game. They turned good, they were bounty hunters, and this is what I was talking about like in the 90s when the Rogues weren't really villains, they were just kind of like there that would pop up every once in a while. And then he mentions where Chilblain kills his sister, and now he's here where Chilblain is just some hired muscle for some mob boss.
The Candy Man.
Yeah.
Because he sells drugs.
Yeah. And he has like a bunch of goons with guns, and they're like, shoot him. And Captain Cold's like, listen, and he does like this whole thing, like, I set up a cold field. And like, you can't really tell if he's bluffing. And
it's like I fight someone faster than light every day. You think I can your
which
boys
is a
can
very
stop me.
convincing argument. I'm like,
yeah.
if you can fight the Flash, I'm like, I would not fuck with you.
Yeah,
and he one way he does it. He brings this up multiple times throughout these stories. He can make like a cold wave around him,
yeah,
using like a low frequency
where it just slows down the Flash. Because Captain Cold's whole thing is based around an absolute zero, or if he could slow matter down to a certain level, it'll give him an advantage. And that I think is a cool way to counter the Flash, because then we're like, well, why doesn't he just run so fast? Do this just sets up a vague, he has to run slower.
Yeah, he's Better than the turtle.
Yeah, that's for sure.
How dare you?
So he does this.
Big turtle fan over here.
So Captain Cold does this blustery speech, and he's like, "I'm not here for business. I don't like that you're selling drugs, but like, I'm not here to bust up your whole racket. This is personal. Give me 15 minutes to take care of this guy, and then you could just be on your way." And he's like, your move, Candyman. And he's like, fine. And Chillblade's like, I could take him. And he like makes some dumb pun. He's like, you're an absolute zero. And Captain Cold's like,
Chillblade keeps making. Yeah. Like,
Did we discuss that Chillblade's like probably a 90s villain? I'm
yeah, he definitely is a 90s villain. He's got pouches everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh my
so,
God,
like, he
he
probably
does.
was like a 90s update. He probably was like a 90s update to Captain Cold,
Yeah,
assuming.
he's
And he's
exactly
like very much like, oh, you're absolute zero. And Captain Cold says like, I grew out of those cold puns a long time ago.
Yeah, you use that gun like a child. You have bad aim, and and Captain Cold just like throws him through a window, and it's very much like a street brawl type fight, not a real supervillain fight. And Captain Cold then freezes him, and he's like, I bathed you in a wide beam, froze your skin. Your insides are still nice and warm. You could feel, but I want you to feel this. So he then takes his frozen body and just throws it off the balcony and just
then
watches
makes
it.
ice spikes to impale him on it.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
makes the ice spikes to impale him on so he can feel himself die, but can't do anything about it.
Yeah. And then it cuts back to Captain Cold's apartment where it looks just like his childhood home, and it's just like this shit everywhere, and it's a mess, and there's just empty bottles of like liquor all over the place. And Angie, who is his personal sex worker that he mentions regularly, she's there for his usual Wednesday date, and he turns her down. He's like, I'm not really feeling it, but pays her anyway. And he just like is sitting there looking at a picture of his sister, and his inner monologue is like, I thought if I avenged her, I would feel better, and I would like, get over this, but it's not. I'm not always so cold. And he's just crying looking at the picture. And that is Flash 182.
Captain Cold's backstory. We got 3 backstories to go.
Yes.
Next, we have
Pied
190,
Piper.
Death Follows the Piper.
So this issue, I wasn't sure if I should include it because it's more setting up the modern Pied Piper status quo, but it gets mentioned enough that I think it was worth it.
I'm glad you kept it. Is one of the other ones you were thinking of including Weather Wizard at all? Because they mentioned him at the
Weather Wizard
end.
actually doesn't really get one.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
the most we get is in the miniseries at the end.
Because they're like, he's trying to avenge his brother, and I'm like, I guess that's a whole backstory we didn't
Well, he's
get.
not trying to. He fucking murdered.
Oh,
his
yeah,
brother.
yeah.
Yeah.
Avenge him by stopping the murder, him.
and I want to scratch what I said before because I don't mind. I don't mind this backstory that much either. I think it actually ties in a
Yeah,
lot.
for me, Sly, this and Heatwave were my favorites too. The Captain Cold one was okay for me. It's one of those where, again, like I couldn't get it out of my head, the Phil thing where it's like this guy looks goofy, but he has like really tragic backstory.
Yeah.
But like I'm the more kind of like sympathetic a villain almost becomes, even though Heatwave's not like super sympathetic, but he's like a very different than just like, my dad was an abusive cop, which I think it strikes like closer resonance with Ryan than me. The fact that you said like, I know kids like this at my job kind of a thing.
Yeah. I more pulled it because like having the gang, like the members of this gang come from like a lot of it is like a lot of Captain Cold stuff that I really liked about it was more his like that he was stuck in the cycle of poverty and violence where they were just like everyone was drinking and then he turns to alcohol, and like I find that to be compelling, but I do agree that I like all the other ones more than the Captain Cold one. I just think the Captain Cold one is also good.
All right, so the Pied Piper one is Ryan said he's part of the gang, but this is still like when he was like trying to be a good guy.
Yeah.
But he was framed by Mirror Master for killing people thought he killed his parents. So he's being chased by the FBI. So he breaks into
Mirror Master's a dick.
Yeah.
Mirror Master's my least favorite rogue by like.
I love him. I love
I
him
thought
so
he
much.
was very interesting.
I like the older one, the classic one.
You just hate everything Grant Morrison does, Sly, because he created Evan McCulloch.
Of course he fucking did. The most Irish guy fucking around.
He's Scottish.
Scottish.
He's Scottish. They're
Scottish.
very different.
They're so different. All right, so I'm gonna have people fucking say, they are you fucking cultural, fucking Polish and Ukrainian. It's like Polish and Ukrainian. Fuck my dick. Okay, all right. Okay, so Pied Piper breaks into the tricksters.
Yeah, because the tricksters,
again-
we mentioned this last time, but the trickster is an FBI agent, and Piper
Yes.
basically comes to him to be like, can you help me? I was framed for this.
I was shocked by the fact that this other supervillain was an FBI agent now.
And this other trickster, we had mentioned the trickster in the last episode.
This is
That's
the original
younger
one.
one. This is
Not
the
kid,
original
not
one.
the kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And he'd been clean and good for like a while at this point.
Since like Mark Waid, right?
Yeah, since like I don't think he'd been like a villain since like the early 90s.
Yeah. So Trickster and him fight because Trickster wants to bring him in. Pied Piper shows off his abilities, making a bunch of rats come in and swarm the Trickster.
Yeah, he can control rats with his music, like, you know, a Pied Piper.
Yeah, and then guys try to come in to try to help Trickster, some other agents, and Pied Piper uses his Pied Piperness to mind control them. They did knock each other.
Yeah, at first they look like they're gonna shoot each other, and then the trickster's like, "No, don't do it. They have families." And he's like, Piper just makes them knock each other out. And he's like,
I
"I've
don't
never
kill."
killed anyone. Yeah, I don't kill. I have a strict no killing code."
And so then Pied Piper's like, I gotta, I think I came to your help, but fuck this, and he leaves.
I mean, the main thing that he says that I really like that ties into a lot of the stuff we were talking about last time is Jesse, the trickster, asks him, if you're innocent, why are you running? And he's like, what happened to me inside those walls, they'll send me back to Iron Heights. It's a horrible place. I won't go back ever. And like, to me, this like directly appeals to me where it's like, hey, harsh punishment doesn't deter crime.
Mm-hmm.
So Pied Piper leaves, but Trickster put a tracking device on him. So Pied Piper goes back into the sewers, and this is where he starts having his flashbacks, Captain Cold style.
He was like he actually came from wealth, so he's a very privileged kid. But his parents didn't love him. Like, not they didn't love him. They didn't show him appreciation.
They were like perfectionists, and he was an imperfect child because he was deaf.
Yeah, but then they gave him like an
Hey, did you guys catch who the doctor was? It's Will Magnus from 52.
I caught that.
It doesn't really matter. They just offhandedly mention it. But yeah, they give him like this super hearing aid.
Yeah, and so this is like it's an interesting concept because like it shows like his appreciation for music after he was deaf for like his entire childhood.
Mm-hmm.
If he gets it, but also like he's not abused by his parents, but they don't really love him.
They're neglectful.
Either.
They're kind of like a little like neglectful.
They're just not like supportive parents, because it's like he tries playing music too because he loves it so much, but he's not like a good player of music. Mm-hmm. And his parents just want him to be one way, to be like a rich person, a rich egalitarian. Yeah. And he's not this
and even at school, and even in school, people are like, "Fuck that fucking."
They're like, he's a weirdo. Yeah,
they just think he's weird. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why when he like discovers the power of his super sonic music that can control people, he's like, now I feel power for.
Well, even before that, he has to go on his own because he comes out as gay, and his parents basically kick him out of the house. Or it's not clear if they kick him out or he just leaves, but he says it doesn't go over very well.
Yeah. So he says like they didn't like him that much beforehand, and it didn't help.
Yeah, when I came out of the closet.
Yeah. And that's when because of his heightened hearing, he's trying to invent a flute with a higher range and better reverb, but instead he invents his mind controlled flutes.
And so he joined up the Rogues in his backstory, but then eventually when Barry Allen died, he's like, he had a wake up call. And
I really like the little touches they have. Like they have just one panel of Hartley, the Piper, with the Rogues, and Captain Cold's like, "Hey, can the personal chatter, kid? We're here to play cards, not swap life stories." And they're all sitting there playing poker. And
it's just like when he's in college and stuff, when he's like trying to talk to people, and they're all like, he's off to the side, kind of by himself.
Yeah, and I like that it's him and the Trickster off to the side, because it's like they're the ones that go good. See. Mm-hmm. It's like little things like that in the panel layouts that I really like.
So then we cut to Heatwave for the first time. He's taking down a bunch of criminals who were robbing a truck or something.
Yeah. He smacks them with a heat gun, and he has a heat gun that shoots fire. That's his thing. He's like the opposite Captain Cold.
Yeah, that's like a running theme, like him and fire and ice. Him and Captain get along, and but he's pretty much fire. Captain Cold. He's like and so I guess to defeat that dichotomy, he became a good guy too. And he's working for the FBI as well. And Pied Piper meets up with him, tries to ask for his help now.
Yeah, and then he says, like, just go to Wally West. He's a good man. He'll make sure to help you. And Piper hasn't been doing it because it's like the most risky person to go to. because there's probably people watching him. And then Trickster breaks in and it's like, I got a proposition that we never find out because that's the end of like basically this issue.
Yeah, and then it cuts to story stuff where a giant monster attacks the city.
Yeah. But at least, I mean, yeah, we don't have to get into that, but we do get a scene of Wally talking to Hunter about like they're talking to the Trickster about like what do they think their motivations are, and it's just like I'm glad that there was one page of like what I was talking about last time. Like, see, Wally and Hunter were like friends, and he was a regular. He would pop up in a lot of issues like this.
Yeah, that you'd need to like talk to him to learn about the motivations.
Yeah.
And I know we always shit on like the story interjections. That's one reason why I do like this story because it has a forward momentum throughout. Because you want to see where Piper goes to try and clear his name. So I think it helps to have that on top of the backstory.
Yeah.
So we get to our next backstory. Issue 212 is based around the Mirror Master.
A guy that uses mirrors, how could that be cool, you ask? Well...
yeah, it's pretty cool. So, it's all about, like, light manipulation and stuff, so...
His power, I'm just gonna say, I kind of hated it throughout, because I'm like, you can just do... like,
yes!
His is
so
the most
magic.
crazy one. Yeah, because he's like, basically, as long as there's, like, a reflective surface, he can, like, go in it, out of it. He plays, like... mind games where it's like, he puts people in it where it's like, hi, you thought I was over here, but I'm over here. I turned your partner into a mirror, and now you killed him by breaking that mirror.
Yeah, and that's the important thing for me. They keep saying like, talk about who makes a real rogue, who doesn't. And Captain Cold has like a code like avoid killing us, you have to. Mirror Master doesn't give a fuck. He just kills whoever.
He is the most evil of the ones we read. I think.
He is.
He's a mercenary.
He's
it's really annoying because later on it gets into question like when Trickster, the kid Trickster shows up, they're like he's not a real rogue. He doesn't have the same values as us. Like, you're just Mirror Master. Fuck off.
The thing about Captain Cold is he's always okay with killing cops, and these guys are all cops.
Okay.
And the thing is, like,
he doesn't say that in his narration.
Yeah,
but
that's a big thing to murder cops specifically.
I mean, the thing is, it's like part of what I like about the rogues, and it is what we get to. I think is that they say in I don't remember how explicit it is, but in the final miniseries we're going to talk about is Captain Cold a lot of times and a lot of the rogues are kind of full of shit a lot, where they like to play the moral high ground, but they're full of shit. Like, they're assholes, and they break the rules all the time, and that is a recurring thing.
It's similar to how if you ever saw, like, they always were like, I was doing the right thing, I was helping people, I was living by a code. No criminals are like, I'm just scum. They're always like, I'm living by my own principles, and these are important. It just happens to be that, I do this bad thing to get my, whatever.
That's probably like the main reason why I don't fundamentally. This fundamentally is not the type of stories I would enjoy, because it touches on an issue of comics I don't like, which is villain worshipping, and to make villains seem cool, they always have to kill people. So you have, and since they're popular characters, they stay on forever. So you have just these serial killers are basically gonna stay around forever and never get any real comeuppance.
Yeah, it's always like the problem with trying to make your villains likable when they are murderers, like the Harley Quinn situation, where you're like, isn't it so fun? And it's like, didn't she kill people?
I have this problem
if Captain Cold really had a no killing policy, it would have worked. But since he's a hypocrite,
I don't necessarily agree with that, because I don't think we're ever supposed to root for these people.
But they're never gonna get the comeuppance because they're popular characters. Oh, they're basically gonna keep coming, and we are supposed to root for them a little bit because they are like sympathetic characters.
But you could still understand why someone's behaving the way they do and still don't think they should win, and you don't necessarily root for them. Like, in all of Johns' run, the rogues always lose. Like,
I know, but they never get permanently caught. It seems like the Joker. It's like the Joker scenario where it's just because of the nature of comics never ending. If you have the villains keep escalating the scales and murdering people all the time, that always just creates like that's when we talk about whether we should kill villains or not, because that goes beyond even reality. Because in reality, if you kill people, you will usually, like, rightfully or wrongfully, you will not live forever being with that type of lifestyle. But villains are, because they live in a superhero story. So they're able to reflect the real world by being murderers, but not able to reflect the real world by living a murderous, violent lifestyle, but never getting the comeuppance for living that lifestyle.
I mean, so how do you feel about the fact that, like, in his run, Johns does kill a few villains?
I like that, but you can never kill Captain Cold.
Yeah.
I think Mirror Master likes it the most because Captain Cold at least tries to keep a code, while Mirror Master
I feel like his relationship with his sister kind of like really pulls on the heartstrings, whereas like Mirror Master doesn't.
He's
have
just
that.
a dickhead.
Yeah. But I mean, he's also like kind of living a miserable life too, as we'll see at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that like I definitely don't think you're wrong, Sly. Like I totally agree with that. It's just I think for me like I like when villains are fleshed out, and then like this reads fundamentally different than something like Nemesis to me, where I feel like something like that. No, but like for something like that, like I feel like the villain, I'm supposed to be like, what a cool guy, I want him to win. Where here, like I do think these characters are pretty cool, but like I never get the feeling that Johns is writing it in a way that I'm like, I can't wait to see them beat the Flash. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the fair point. I do get a sense that he's setting these villains up so Flash can kick their ass later on.
Yeah, that is exactly what happened.
Last thing I just wanted to add is I do agree, like Ryan, when you mentioned about like the hypocritical nature of Captain Cold, I'm like, that is exactly why I don't mind Mirror Master being here, even if this dude is a murderer, and like again, he murdered the Pied Piper's parents. Like this dude's a piece of shit, but it's like Captain Cold's like whatever. It's because the villains are like way more okay with being hypocrites, whereas like we're more prone to like point it out in heroes because they should be held to higher standards. Whereas like these guys are murderers in the first place. Who cares if like they don't have consistent internal
and when we get
philosophies.
scenes of the rogues like hideouts and stuff, Captain Cold never chastises Mirror Master for killing a bunch of people, but he does punch him in the face because he's like, you can't do drugs here. And it's like, but it's like that kind of hypocrisy I think like rings true to the character for me, where I'm like, that's interesting, where you have this moral code that is like, you say that you follow these rules, but it's really you just choose when to follow them. And I think like a lot of real life villains also have that problem.
Yeah, that's a point of clarification, because since we get a lot of narration from Captain Cold specifically, and we're going to see them be hypocrites, but I wasn't sure, from my initial reading of it, it felt like writers fighting for control of these characters. But the fact that Jeff Johns acknowledges it in some way makes it more okay, because what happens is they do kill people later on when we cover, but it was under different writers, and Jeff Johns tries to bring back the code a little bit. But if they're hypocrites the entire time, it makes a bit more sense.
I did feel iffy with. We'll get into it later, but I did feel iffy there too, where they're like, "We got to write this wrong." I'm like, "Do you? You're really concerned about this?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
So Mirror Master, they just like they always introduce him how like in medias res where they're fighting, and he's killing FBI agents, and he does turn one guy into a mirror, and when the mirror breaks, there's blood everywhere. Like it's crazy.
Do you see that there's like the little layer of flesh underneath that little mirror sliver of his eye too? Like he just turned him like 2D.
Mirror Master is one of those characters that I find his powers make no sense at all.
Yes.
But they're so visually interesting to me that I'm like, it's fine. They're so fun to watch that I'm like, it's whatever. And we do get a little narration that he's like, some of them say us rogues got the power to take over the world, but we ain't got the brains to do it. What they don't understand is it's not about brains, right? It's about want. That's why I stick with the rogues. They respect that. They know I'm with the group for my own selfish reasons, just like them. And like I like that idea that he's like, we don't care. We just want what
we want.
Us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want what we want, and we all stick together to try to get each of us what we want.
And in the traditional gang role, Mirror Master's the getaway driver.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And it goes back to his childhood. He was raised in an orphanage in Scotland, and there was a kid in the orphanage who was a bigger kid, and he would like grab the younger kids and lead them out to like the stream, and it's implied that he would rape them or sexually abuse them somehow.
Yeah. He even says like, you know, we always wanted to tell Miss McCulloch, the leader of the orphanage, but he said that he'd find their real parents and slice their throats. They'd never come back to get them. And he's like, kids that age believe all kinds of things, and I sure did. And like that's so real and sad to me, like that these kids just like believe that.
Also, I like that you can see the Scottish accent in all his narration, like very distinctly.
Yes.
I'm like, I could hear it the whole time. Georgie grabs the bigger kid, grabs him one night, brings him down to the stream, and he was scared, but then he says, my fear went away, and he grabs a rock, and he beats Georgie and actually drowns him in the river. And he's like, you
can see his reflection in the river, and it's like, it's a powerful thing that is.
Which is, it has like this imagery, but I don't feel like I wish he could connect a bit more. This is the closest it comes to fully connecting the mirror stuff to his personality.
No, he does it a lot.
Like
there's a lot of mirror stuff.
He does the imagery, but specifically like thematically like this like.
But he also like he was just given this stuff from the government.
I know, but like later on to talk. I don't know if they bring it up here. I was reading just comments. People talk about how Mirror Master. has his own fantasy world inside the mirrors. I don't know if that's a thing or if that's people's interpretation
Is
of the
that
character.
the Wonderland?
Yeah, so like,
kind of.
like there's like all these potential interesting things here, but for most part, he's just a hitman who.
But I think that's the point.
Yeah,
is
he's
that like
much
But when
until
they
he
really
becomes-
touch upon it, and I feel like don't touch upon it at all, or make him fully like just a hitman.
Well, but no, but I think what Johns does is, up until he becomes Mirror Master, it's just this more subtle imagery, and after he gets the powers, that's when he starts to delve more into the mirror stuff. Like, that's not part of his backstory, because he becomes Mirror Master arbitrarily, because when the original one dies, the gear is just lying around. It's only after he becomes the powers that he gets the powers that it becomes, he delves into what that means.
Yeah, but
that's
then-
after his backstory.
But that makes the mirror imagery like pointless to me. Then before that, at that point, then like it just seems like it's trying to be cool. It doesn't seem like it has a thematic purpose.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of it is facing himself.
I think like
the-
yeah, Ryan has a point there. I do feel like this was the kind of most tenuous, weakest connection to his powers out of the four too.
Yeah.
we don't know what his powers are.
He does say, like we were just talking about before, that he still sends Miss McCullough a share from every job he pulls. And it's like, it's all anonymous, of course. Every Scotsman knows. You never do a good deed just to brag about it, do you? You just do it because it's right. And as he's saying this, he's smiling over the drowned kid that he killed.
But that to me like really works with the like, I have a code,
Right.
but I'm really a piece of shit.
Exactly. And then so basically he just becomes like a hitman in Scotland. He's beating people. He's killing people.
Yeah, he kills some more people in the real world in the meantime.
Yep. And then the FBI grabs him.
Before the FBI grabs him, he does
yes, right.
a hit. It's one more hit that he does, and
He gets his eye scratched, so he can't see fully, but he's like, I'll kill the guy anyway. And after he shoots him...
yeah, he realizes his mistake, and what had happened is when he was given to the orphanage, he was given, like, in the cradle was a picture of just his birth parents. Mm-hmm. And so he's had that on him the whole time, and then he takes out the picture, and he realizes, I just shot my father. I was like, oh, that's a good twist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He watches the funeral from afar, and then he goes to see his mom to try to make things right, and his mom actually killed herself because of the death of the dad. So he's like, well, I killed my parents, and then he's staring into the mirror.
Into the looking glass I went.
Yep. This is when the American government grabs him, and they're basically
So
like...
this was this part is the origin that Grant Morrison gave him, where in his Animal Man run, right? Because a couple years prior, the original Mirror Master had died, and basically the government, like when they were making like the Suicide Squad, like that era, they approached him and were like, we need you to not necessarily work straight up for like the CIA, but like, for example, Animal Man was like a big animal rights activist, and they sent him to go like hassle him and convince him to not give the government such a hard time. So like more like the shady, shitty kind of things the government
you
does.
use supervillains for it so that you have plausible deniability. So it's like, oh, it wasn't the U.S. government; it was the fucking Mirror Master again.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's
And like that to me, that's a very like late '80s kind of like government story that I always really like.
Yeah,
of just
I
like
think
the
that
government
is-
just does a lot of shitty stuff.
Well, I mean, like, would we not have tried to use the Mirror Master against the Russians in Afghanistan? Like, of course we would have.
That's,
Yeah.
that's literally the Rhino's origin of Spider-Man. The communists created a Rhino suit, and they put a guy in a Rhino suit.
Yeah, I can't
The,
imagine
wait, the
governments
Russians
not
were
doing this.
responsible for Rhino?
Yes, he's a communist.
Yeah. I can't imagine governments not doing this to try to... I mean, everything changes when you have super villains and superheroes.
But by the way, almost when next we're gonna get to Spider-Man a bit more. Almost every Spider-Man villain has ties to communism because Stanley fucking hates communism.
That's funny.
But then we get it. What would almost always happen if the government does that is once he has all the powers, he gets tired of having these like handlers, and he traps them all in the mirror world.
Right,
Yeah,
and so
just
he's
like
like,
real
yeah,
life.
fuck this. And
that's another thing. So whenever he doesn't kill people, he traps them into mirror hell, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yep. And so that's what, at the end here, we see that he's like, our agent, this is James, the trickster, gets a letter, and it's his agent's trapped in a mirror hell. And then we see him go back to the rogues hideout, and he's like, I got some plans tonight. They're asking if he wants to play cards. And this is when he goes into the bathroom.
And it's like,
He's
I
like,
can use a mirror like 1,000 different ways, can turn a man inside out, can cut a hole through a 7-foot wall of concrete, make you see things from your fantasies or your nightmares. But
But
it's
everyone
like,
needs an escape. and he
Yep.
instead of going into the mirror, he uses the mirror to put cocaine on, and he's like, "This is my Wonderland. I'm gonna."
I ain't ever leaving Wonderland.
Yeah.
So like, I remember when Ryan told me about this trait. Mirror Master's so edgy. He smokes coke off a mirror, and
I think it's awesome.
I would have liked it better if he didn't snort coke off a mirror. It would be more sense as an alternative to the fucking mirror, and the mirror was just this thing, like this other thing, like he just, like you said, like this costume just happened to inhabit, but it feels like he's trying to be clever, but it's just weird.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like from what we know about him, he's just like this asshole that always wants to get his, but then like he can't. Every time we see him looking at himself in his reflection, it's this like he has to like do like soul searching, whether it's like, oh, I liked murdering this boy, or like I didn't like murdering my parents. But when he says they laugh at me being the bloody mirror master because they don't look into the mirror with honesty at themselves. Everyone needs an escape, and he's saying like he likes being mirror master, but when he's Evan, he hates it, so he just goes into a coke stupor.
I know,
like,
but he should be
works
snorting
for me.
coke off a mirror. He should be like, I just snort coke alternatively to the mirror entirely.
I mean, people do coke off bathroom mirrors. Like that is how most people do coke.
If he has that much of an aversion to being a mirror master, why would he use a mirror so he can see his face?
That
He
after?
doesn't have an
matter.
aversion to being a mirror master.
It does matter because that was purposely. You can't say it doesn't matter when it's a purposeful right decision to make him.
He
do
has
that.
an aversion to being Evan
I know.
Yeah,
So
he
why
loves
would he use a
being
mirror?
mirror
He would
master.
just snort coke normally.
because he loves
No,
mirrors.
that is normal. That is how people snort cocaine.
But he
They do it
specifically
off
has an
bathroom
aversion to it.
mirrors.
If he has an aversion, that's a character trait. That he's
No,
aversion
he
to.
doesn't
can't
have an aversion to mirrors. He has an aversion to being himself.
But like, if he's just snorting coke, he's gonna be looking back at himself after the mirror's done. Like that seems very sloppy writing to me.
That's why he does the coke,
I know, but then
so
when
he
he's done,
can't see
so that he
himself.
can face.
I know,
himself.
but then he's gonna every line he removes, he sees more of himself in the coke. Like there's a motif there
Yeah.
failing.
More of himself in the coke.
He sees more of himself as the cocaine sets in. So the only time he can face himself is when he's high.
All right, if that makes more sense. Okay.
Yeah.
I wish the story like illustrate that imagery more. Like I wish the story illustrated that more imagery.
like it had like a panel maybe of after he did the coke, like he was a blurry figure in the mirror. So he
exactly
couldn't see
something like that.
himself.
Like,
Okay.
it
Yeah,
just feels like
I don't think that's wrong.
Like it just feels like the imagery has such potential for. That's why Mirror Master is like such a flawed character to me because it's such potential for great imagery. It just always comes a little bit short for me.
Yeah. Okay. So now we are
last
at
one.
issue of this issue 218, Heat Wave's backstory. And he starts with being like, I'm not like other rogues. I know I have
I'm a
problems.
good
I've
guy.
known since I'm a kid. I'm sick. And it's him like breaking into a house to investigate a Murmur killing. Remember, Murmur's the guy that sewed his mouth shut. He's a serial killer.
Yeah.
Yep. And so his thing is that he's like, I'm a man who raises hell. It's what I do. It's what I've always done because I don't have a choice. And he explains that he was from like, he lived on a small farm outside of town with his brother and grandma and his parents. And his dad showed him one night. He's like, look, it's like, here's a candle. And he's holding his hand out over it. And then Heatwave goes to put his hand out over it and just burns his hand. And his dad's like, Mick, are you okay? And it's like, I remember staring at the ceiling, wishing I could feel it again, wishing I could see it. He was like obsessed with it. And so,
And part of the things that I like about this family dynamic is like we've talked about previously, like how some villains, like some writers are always like all villains are just because like their parents abuse them and that's why. And like
Yeah.
I like that Johns is grounding all of their psychoses in something related to childhood, but they all have different backgrounds where like Captain Cold had shitty parents. Hartley had Pied Piper had like neglectful parents. Evan had no parents. Heatwave has a loving family.
I just realized that's probably like a. I don't know. Was this before Jeff Johns' run? Because it feels like a contrast to Captain Cold specifically.
I mean,
Captain Cold has
this
that
is
shit-
all Jeff Johns.
I know, so
Yeah.
it seems like purposely contrasting. Captain Cold has a shitty family.
Yeah.
Heatwave had a
Yeah.
loving family.
yeah, it's like
I-
Ryan said, they're trying to diversify it.
I think that works really well.
And then afterwards, he goes downstairs and he says like, I was hungry and cold. I hated being cold. And he lights a candle. He lights a match and he looks at the candle. But then he looks at the drapes and he lights the drapes on fire. And then it just shows him outside the house, like silhouetted by all the flames. And he says, I couldn't help myself. And they were trapped on the second floor. They're like screaming down for him to help. But then he looked at his father and his father was just looking at him right in the eyes, wondering, it's like, why did you do this? He says, I wanted to go help them, but I couldn't take his eyes off the flames. So it shows like the
He
flames.
says, I wanted to get help. I loved my family.
Yeah. So it shows like the flames in his pupils, and then as he's crying, he's like, I watched them all burn away and I couldn't do a thing about it. So I was like, okay, this guy's like a hardcore addict. He even says it's like he saw therapists. He spent half the
half
money
his
he
money.
stole in my career on therapists, which I enjoyed that touch too. And they labeled him an arsonist, but he's like, that's wrong. I'm a pyromaniac. I'm like,
Right.
I'm just obsessed.
I don't
with
do
fire.
it conscious, like on purpose. I cannot not burn things. Like he can't help himself.
Yeah.
And it is interesting.
That's why Dal said he may not sympathetic. I think he's the most sympathetic because he literally has.
Yeah, he is.
He has no reason. He has no reason to do this. He just can't help himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And every time he's consciously doing anything, he's doing it like here. In the current day, he's like he gets confronted by police, and the police treat him as a bad guy. And he just said he just tells them to stay, lights a fire around to make them not follow him, and he runs away. So whenever he's in conscious decision to control himself, he tries to be a good character. He tries to be a FBI agent and all this stuff, but he just has this spontaneous sickness he can't control.
Yeah, I think what gets harder for me to relate to, I mean, this could, just like with the killing conversation, this could speak something deeper to my psychology and philosophy, where I'm just like, the fact that he keeps falling for the fire again and again each time makes me lose sympathy for him, where I'm like, I think this is terrible. It's like how he goes to like school and he's all wrapped up in like winter gear because he just hates feeling cold. Everyone makes fun of him, and at one point this one kid locks him in when they go to a slaughterhouse, he locks him in a meat freezer for an hour, and it was just like hell for him. And so what he did the next day is he lit that kid's house on fire and burned his family alive.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I feel like I think it's intentionally supposed to, like, you're not supposed to be sure how you feel about it, because it's like with a lot of like psychological disorders, it's like, it's not his fault, but is it? Like, it's hard for us as neurotypical people to like even understand what it's like for him.
Yeah.
And I find that's why Heatwave is such an interesting character to me, because like he's trying so hard to be a hero, but how much credit can you give him when he still like murdered this kid's family? Like.
Yep.
And even like he goes to join a circus as a fire breather, and he has like a good life there. But one day he's just like, I'm gonna set the circus on fire, and he murders all.
The thing that I like about it is he's like, but one evening for no reason at all, I turn everything back on, and I knew I had gotten worse because I took pictures this time.
Yeah, and when he said I turned everything back on, I like that it's just him turning on the stove, and that's what triggers his reaction. He just keeps like turning it up higher, and then he burned it, and then he takes pictures, and then it's like catastrophizing his problem even further. And he's like, I couldn't wait to see them, but when I did, I finally ripped them up. I ripped them up in disgust. I tried to forget what I had done. I like that there he's like, oh my god, it's like, it's getting worse.
Yeah.
This is just...
And I really love that it's not some big grandiose, like it wasn't like a Flash case or a Batman case. It was just he was cooking, like, and one time it triggered him.
Yeah, like sometimes you don't need something like momentous to be like, oh no, my dad died, so I have to now resort to this. Sometimes you just get worse on your own. And then he watches the TV, and he sees an opportunity when they're like, look at this Captain Cold guy, a man who had mastered absolute zero, has escaped and is at large on the news. And so he designed a heat gun, and again, this is the thing where everyone just has the ability to design these amazing weapons.
He was a flame eater in a circus. He has some training with like fire.
That's a fair point, but I actually this works better for me than Captain Cold's, because conceptually Heatwave's costume is a direct correlation to his psychosis, because he has to wear a flame-proof costume. He's not the Human Torch. He has to wear a flame-proof costume. So, and like most heat-resistant outfits usually look fucking goofy anyway, so it doesn't seem out of the ordinary that he put on his costume to carry out fire crimes.
And he says, I was ready to commit crimes, to burn buildings, all in the name of robbery. The fire, it wasn't an illness anymore. It was a gimmick. Yeah. And I like that he's like, I don't care about the money. I'm doing this as just a way to make fire, and it's easier to pretend to be a supervillain who wants to rob banks.
Yeah, and that's why I liked him a bit more than the other ones, because I feel like it's easy kind of to give everyone, like every villain, a sympathetic backstory to be like, this is the way I am, and I failed from the path of good because I was abused as a child. Whereas like I like that this guy's like trying to like hide away from these problems by this just struck me as, I don't want to say more realistic, but it's
I feel it feels more realistic to me.
I feel like this fits with the style of Flash.
There's also people who have like totally happy, loving families that just that end up being sociopaths or pyromaniacs.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
That's
like
the
I was
thing.
thinking, like
So
serial
it's like-
killers. A lot of times, like their
Yeah.
kids don't know that their father is a serial killer until like
Yeah.
it comes out.
Yeah, or like it reminded me like Dexter a little bit here too, where he's like,
Yep.
I'm gonna channel. He eventually he's like, I'm gonna channel my obsession with burning towards things that can help me instead of just hurt me.
Well, this is I'm really glad that we're having these conversations, because the main reason I wanted to do this was to showcase that like the rogues are not a typical team of supervillains that are all just gimmicky powers and nothing else. Like they all have distinct personalities and they function as a team, and I find that to be much more interesting than most supervillain rogues galleries. And I'm glad that you guys are like have lots of different things to say about each one, even if some are more successful than others. Like the fact that we're having a full conversation about each member is, like, I think a success to the diversity of the cast.
That is a good point. Each one, they're not all purely one type of villain. They're not all pushing the same type of style.
And so it shows him fighting the Flash, and then he meets Captain Cold, and he's like, "Hey, I'm Heatwave." And then he joins up with the Rogues, and then it explains that he always like struggled against Captain Cold. And before this, they said I got along with them all fairly well, even the elitist, the Top. I'm like, I did not realize how common the Top is, because they mentioned one more time where it's like the Top was using the Weather Wizards brothers like hideout to like stage his stuff. Before
the main rogues team was Captain Cold, Heatwave, Pied Piper, Trickster, the Top, Weather Wizard, and Captain Boomerang.
It's just funny that this guy that just spun around was like an elitist. I don't know.
Yeah.
Makes me giggle.
So yeah, Captain Cold, they have a fight because Captain Cold's like, here's your share, but less 20% because I introduced you to the rogues. And Heatwave throws it in his face. He's like, why don't you save it for Angie? Or better yet, your sister. And then they have a fist fight about
Yeah, I'm
it.
just fighting words. And then everyone has to like break them up. And then after that, like after he gone into prison, it was cold and dark, and he realized like he should use his talents to help stop fires. So now he tries to be a good guy, and now this is when he joins the FBI. We get to see Murmur again, Phil's favorite character.
My favorite character.
It's his favorite character too.
I mean, the main thing here, Murmur, again, like before, is just like a plot device where Heatwave's like going to take him out, and Captain Cold shows up and like saves him, and he's like, you've hooked, and Heatwave's like, so that's it now. You hooked up with this kind of scum, and he lists all the edgy villains that we hated last time.
Captain Cold comes to save Murmur, not Heatwave.
Yeah,
It's a very important point. Because Heatwave, Captain Cold, still like he was a good guy, and Captain Cold hates him anyway. So he's
and this is the prologue to the story I was talking about last time, Rogue War, where Heatwave's like, this new breed of rogues are giving us a bad name, and Captain Cold's like, I want nothing to do with them, but I don't want your kind in Keystone. He's like, you guys are a bunch of sellouts, and basically he's like, you guys were one of us, but now you're cops, so you're worse than these murderous scumbags. Which, like, I've heard lots of people say that, like, rats are worse than the people that they're, like, ratting on.
Yeah.
And
That's a common mentality among criminals.
yeah. And so Captain Cold, like, helps Murmur escape, even though he doesn't like him, because, like, there's nothing worse than that. And
then Heatwave goes back to, like, a bar, and they ask, like, the bartender asks him, would it be lemonade and a shot of tequila? And then the narration saying, after all this, you understand, don't you? I'm not a bad person. And then he's looking at the matches again of the bar matches. He says, I'm not a villain. And he lights the match. And then again, it shows a building burning down with him silhouetted walking away.
He burns down the Irish bar he was at.
Yeah, I'm just sick. And Captain Cold is going to burn. They're all going to burn.
Slayer, how can you tell if it's an Irish bar or a Scottish bar?
I was about to say he's going after Mary Master for this attack, but no. But no, this guy. For me, I view this as Chris Stein. He's back on his wagon again. Back on the bullshit.
Yeah.
He's back on his bullshit. He fell off the wagon.
Yeah, that's funny.
So I included the next issue as kind of more of a recap setup issue. This one's written by Mark Waid. It's All Flash #1. And I just want to recap what happens in the meantime. Jeff Johns' run ends, and during Infinite Crisis, which we read, do you guys remember when Wally ran into the Speed Force and then Bart came back as an adult?
No.
It doesn't matter.
But what happened was during Infinite Crisis, when they took Superboy to
Yeah, they're pushing, all the speedsters were pushing Superboy at the speed of light.
Oh,
right?
I do remember that.
Yeah, and so what happened? All of them disappeared except for Barb and Jay. They're the last ones left. And Wally went
so
to
Wally,
Speed Force.
Wally, and Linda and the kids, because he has the twins now, go into the Speed Force, and Bart comes back older, and DC's like, Bart's the Flash now, and after 8 issues, they're like, nobody likes this, let's kill him.
The classic comic book response and stuff. This isn't working. They gotta die.
This issue, when it came back, people were like, "Yeah, Flash is back to being in his prime," and Mark Waid.
Oh,
stays
because
like
Wade's on it.
Yeah, but
Yes.
Mark Waid stays for like 6 issues, probably
I could
because
see
he
that.
hates DC.
Yes. Well, it was. He literally was like, they gave me the Flash, and I still can't work for these fucking people. But so the main thing is that when Mark Guggenheim, the second writer to write Bart's series, he comes on issue 9, and they said, you could do whatever you want, but by issue 13, Bart has to die, and the rogues have to kill him. And they were like, he was like, why though? That doesn't work. And they're like, that's the way it is.
gonna be cool.
So meanwhile, at the same time, in Jeff Johns, as often is, he's like coming to try to fix everything. So in his Justice Society run, he's like, you know what? If they're killing Bart, I'm gonna have Wally West come back. So this issue picks up immediately after both of those things happen, which happened simultaneously. Is that Wally shows up, getting pulled out of the Speed Force, and Bart gets killed. It starts with Wally looking very pissed, and he's like, my name's Wally West. I'm the Flash, the fastest man alive, and I'm still too late. And he is just, he's back. He's recapping, like, some of the stuff that I was just saying, and he's just recapping Bart, and he's like, I came back, I figured I'd come back to check up on Bart, not to catch his killer.
What I liked about reading this, it's just so funny, like having you jump us around different like time eras and stuff. Because just last episode, again, like the last comic series I read, they introduced Bart, and I'm like, oh, it's so weird having Barry Allen's grandson from the future that like time grew up is now like Kid Flash. I'm like, oh, okay. And then suddenly he's not only has become the Flash, but he's been murdered in the meantime.
Yeah. And he was Impulse for a long time. He had his own book for almost 100 issues, which is like insane to think about in modern
I think I remember
comics
seeing it in
terms.
stores because I
Yeah,
remember
it's-
Impulse. I was like, oh yeah, I know Impulse.
Yeah, Impulse is really great. And then it like recaps everything, and then like Wally's having this heartfelt reunion with the Justice League, and Batman calls him. He's like, Bart's dead, go do something about it. And the main thing that happened was Bart lost his powers during some big plot that was orchestrated, I'm sorry in advance guys, by
No, it's-
Inertia, his clone from the future.
It's too late. Once I saw it was Inertia was his clone from like the future, I was like, fuck comics.
I felt the same way. I'm like, again.
So
like,
Inertia was a character in one story in Impulse's book for like a couple issues, and I don't know why. I'm guessing that might have also been part of the like he has to be part of this to kill them, because like Bart doesn't have villains, so like this is the closest we have. I don't know.
One guy that showed up.
It would have made too much sense for the Rogues to kill the Flash. So you
Yeah.
have to bring Inertia in.
So Inertia was the one who like orchestrated the whole thing.
What's so agonizing is, to me, like, this is gonna be just like what gets spoiled here is they're just like, oh, Zoom's back anyway, and I'm like, why not have Zoom kill Bart? That just makes so much more sense.
Yes.
Because Zoom wants to make the heroes grow. He doesn't want to kill them outright.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't have done
Which-
that.
We'll
Just wants
talk
to
about
kill their
that
wives.
next. Well, but that makes sense because he wants them to be better heroes.
Yeah,
They can't be
yeah,
heroes.
yeah, I
When they're
guess
dead.
He wants to be the instigating force that makes them into like A+ heroes instead of just being like privileged assholes kind of thing.
Yeah. So it cuts to now Bart's dead body with like his girlfriend at the time crying over him, and all the rogues look like, oh, we just fucked up, didn't we?
And they keep saying like, "Oops, it was an accident," because the idea is like they always go really hard on speedsters, but because they're speedsters, they don't die from it. But
Yeah.
as soon as his powers got taken away, all of a sudden Heatwave can melt him or whatever.
Yeah, and they're like, and they're just arguing, and Weather Wizard's like, oh my god, we killed a kid. I didn't know he was a kid. Fuck. And Captain Cold's like, shut up. He's like, think about this.
To killing like Flash's family after Bart's dead. They're like Iris and Bart's girlfriend are there, and Mirama's like, we should kill the witnesses too. And Iris like, no, it's not.
Yeah, and then Heatwave's like, we just made ourselves the most wanted men on Earth. You think the Justice League isn't going to send do you think the Justice League isn't going to spend every second of their lives hunting us down? And that's when they're like, we got to kill the witness. Mirror Master's like, let's kill the witnesses. And they're like, there's thousands of people. We got to get the fuck
This
out
is
of
also,
here.
I think, ties into reality too, where like you even see in like really like crime-ridden cities and stuff, often people are like, you can do shit, but if you kill a cop, you're gonna get all the police after you for the rest of your life. So you don't want to do that, and that's basically they killed a cop's kid, basically.
Yeah. So they all just scatter, and Inertia's running, and he's like, "Where do I go? Where do I go?"
He runs away from them because they're like, "We gotta like pay you back."
Yeah, they blame Inertia for setting up the plan. And...
Yeah. And then he sees that there's this red tornado chasing him, and it's
does.
Wally. Yeah, Inertia does, and it's Wally. And when he first sees the Flash, Inertia's like, "Bart," and he looks in his eyes, and he's like, "Oh no, it's Wally! Oh shit, I thought you were dead." And Wally's really pissed, so he does what he describes as something worse than killing this child.
It is way worse.
He says it's worse.
I know, it's funny because he acted like it was a mercy when he did it to Zoom, but...
Yeah, so what he does... So... First, we get a couple shots of, if you need to know anything about Inertia's character, it's this. He's like, "Oh, well, Bart was powerless. It's probably because you were back and you stole his speed." And you know what? Bart screamed like a little bitch. And that's basically Inertia's whole character, is he's just like the biggest fucking asshole twerp in the world.
Yeah, when I was seeing this, I'm like, oh my god, he's like mini Eobard Thawne.
Well, I mean, that's like literally
Literally, his name is Thaddeus Thawne, right?
Yeah.
I saw that and I'm like, I see.
And you have to remember, Eobard Thawne was like, until Barry came back, Eobard Thawne was dead for good until, from like 1970 to like 2005, whatever.
Yeah. And so the only thing that I like about him being a clone is that Wally is like, he's a kid, a sick, corrupt clone of my cousin, an irredeemable sociopath, but with Bart's face. And that he is a piece of Bart is the only thing that spares his otherwise fetid life. I can't kill him, so I do something worse. And I do like the idea of like, your like basically like nephew type figure, the guy who killed him looks just like him, and that sends you into like a fervor, like a rage. Like that I could buy that. But so he steals all his speed and traps him forever, and he sets up his body in the Flash Museum staring at Bart for eternity.
I mean, by stealing all his speed, the kid can't move at all. Like, he's immobile.
Yeah.
So he sends him to Time Hell too, and then puts him in the Flash Museum.
Yeah.
And I agree that this is wrong.
It is, I think, like, the fact that this comes up so much in comics, I'm like,
I think
this
these
is
are the only two
worse
times.
than death by far. It's crazy to me that so many heroes, or maybe it's just the Flash always, but like, they're like always okay with being like, I'm gonna eternally punish you.
This
is also why
you.
in 52 I thought it was crazy when Skeets did it to that guy where he brought him down to the lab and he sent him in that time loop forever. I'm like, time hell is such a serious thing to do to people.
It
like,
made sense
don't fuck around
since
Time Hell.
Skeets was Mr. Mind in disguise.
I know, and that's why when he did that to that guy, the football player, I'm like, wow, this is like, he's a crazy
this is
villain.
bad. This is evil.
Like,
yep.
Yeah. But it's I feel like when villains do it, it's better. When the Flash does it twice, I'm like, don't do that.
I
It's a
agree.
problem.
At
And
least with Hunter, they said that like he's unstuck in time and he's destroying the timeline. You have to do something. So he did that to save all of reality. That makes a little more sense than this kid sucks so bad.
Yeah.
I feel bad for you, Ryan, because like you want us to like love Wally, but now with 2 cases of Time Hell, I'm like, I don't know. I don't think he's such a patron saint.
Well, we're about now to fast forward to Final Crisis: Rogue's Revenge.
Well, before we set up, we should just say one of the last panels of the last issue was the Suicide Squad beating the shit out of the Rogues.
Yeah. So, and the reason why I'm excited to do this is because neither Zoom nor Inertia are in Time Hell, so it's fine,
Yeah.
right?
It makes his actions good.
I was gonna say that doesn't excuse it if you're like, I tried to execute this man, but he broke out of prison.
I know.
Yeah, I
I'm
tried to put him
joking.
in time hell, but he escaped.
Yeah, shit.
So these 3 issues are a tie-in to Final Crisis, a big event where basically Grant Morrison was like, what if all the villains won and the world was really terrible? So the only real setup here is that this guy named Libra, who has like some powers of persuasion, has killed the Martian Manhunter and used that to convince basically all the villains in the DC universe to team up with him and to like listen to them.
This reminded me
And-
of fucking 52 again with...
It's very crime Bible-esque.
Yeah, they literally are crime Bible-ists
he
again.
is holding the crime Bible.
But instead of like actually like believing in what was it, the word of Cain and stuff, it's just evil. Yeah,
Yeah,
evil.
like,
Yeah.
crazy
You
evil.
believe that evil
Crazy
will
evil.
ultimately triumph over good in the long
Yeah.
run.
Yeah. Which I think, Sly, you do feel that, right?
You're laughing, but...
So the main setup there is that the rogues are like, we don't do this whole fucking team thing. The Justice League is already after us. We know the Justice League's gonna win because they always do. So fuck you, we're doing our own thing. And this series just kind of explores that.
Yeah, and they're like basically like when you're as a warlord, as an enterprising warlord, when you have people that won't join, you have to crush them.
Yes.
Phil, what did you think of the art here? Because this is still Collins, but we get different colors.
You know, the darker colors made it work for some of the scenes. I thought it didn't.
There are more shadows.
Yeah, the shadows, right? Like in the and the fact that half the time they're like in these like rainy like.
This book looks a lot grungier than the last stuff he covered.
Yeah,
especially because everything's like raining. That there's a lot of like lines.
It's constantly
through the whole
raining,
page.
and I think that fits better with how
I
dark
think
it is.
This is Colin's best work, and the page that is Zoom holding, you will see Zoom and Inertia interact. The main page of them, that's the page that I own the pencils for.
Wow.
Which is
at the end
very
of this
cool.
issue?
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It opens with it's raining, and the rogues go back to their old headquarters. And they find out a bunch of fucking punks have taken up residence in their headquarters, and they have a big fight with the punks.
They murdered them.
They murder these punks.
No, they only sent the time to Mirror Hell. They sent to Mirror Hell.
He
right?
says leave him breathing, but it's so funny because he's like leave him breathing, but it's like Heatwave just burns another person. Captain Cold just freezes a kid. I'm pretty sure he can't breathe through ice, but maybe I'm wrong. And then they send them.
It's like
to
Mortal
Mirror
Kombat
Hell.
rules, like Sub-Zero. Here's my 5 seconds to be back to normal.
This is like the kind of thing that like comic books do all the time. Like we saw this in the Batman animated series too, where it's like, it's to me the equivalent of like Batman throwing someone off a building and you see them land in a dumpster and you're like, they say they're not dead, but like,
Yeah, I know they're dead.
That's why Captain Cold makes more sense in Flash than Mr. Freeze makes sense in Batman, because Batman's like trying to be gritty a lot of times, but then he has a guy with a cold gun that makes people's biological temperature go to 0 and he still survives.
Yeah.
At least the freezing I can buy that if they are literally frozen. Theoretically, if they unfroze right away, like in one shot, that's like a potentially possible thing that humans can do, like cryogenic freezing. But like when Heatwave melts a guy, I'm like, he's dead.
I've been playing Spider-Man on PS4, and it's so funny to me that the game allows you to punch people off buildings like the Empire State's Building, and it's okay. Like literally, it lets you punch people off. It's just so great.
Yeah. He webs them, okay? He makes a web net to catch them.
I watched one guy fall. He just disappeared.
That's the problem with like one problem I have with superhero comics. Like if you know anything about hand-to-hand fighting, you know like Batman and Spider-Man, you're giving all those criminals brain damage. Like
Yeah, you're giving them
there's no
concussions
mercy way
constantly. You're knocking them out.
Yeah, there's no way.
Peter Tomasi writes a Batman story where all of the people with brain damage from Batman punching them so hard make like a gang, and they're like, we're gonna take them down, and there's guys with like batarangs stuck in their heads, and they're not a real threat, but it's just like sad.
Yeah, but reality, that's what happens. Like you can have real fighting is brutal. That's why people don't fight on a regular basis, because it fucking
And
sucks.
that's why like boxing and football, like the people that do that all the
Filled
time
with
get like
concussions.
concussions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Body problems.
So it turns out these guys were the Tricksters' new gang, while the Rogues were missing because they were being chased by everyone on the planet. And
My favorite
Trickster's
touch of the Trickster, this is so dumb, but I feel like Ryan likes this too, is anytime they he falls down or they throw him against the wall, it's just a bunch of gadgets and toys just fly out of his
I
sleeves.
love that. He's got a whole pocket full of banana peels. Come on.
Yeah.
And so Trickster's like, whoa, you guys killed the Flash, you guys are awesome. And Captain Cold's like, you fucking idiot, the game wasn't supposed to be won. We had unspoken rules. Never kill Speedster.
Which again I like, because they're not like it was immoral for us, really. They're mostly like, we fucked up because now they're gonna shit down our throats.
Yeah.
Yeah, they basically they want to keep the game going. They don't want to ever win the game because now they fucking are.
Now they're gonna lose. So now he's like, the Rogues are finished, kid. The old days are dead.
Piper shows up. I forget what he
he's
does.
listening in on the cops like Chire and the rest of the group. He's listening into them through rats, and they're talking about like all.
Not that it matters in this story at all, but the woman here is their new rogue profiler, and it's Ashley Zolomon.
Hunter
She's the one who
Zolman's
replaces
wife,
Hunterman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew that because, spoilers, after this issue, I was like, what the hell happens to Zoom? And then I was reading a whole bunch of things about Zoom. I'm like, Jesus Christ, comics.
Yeah, he does not get treated very well after Johnson.
Speaking of not being treated very well, Barry gets hinted at here as bolt lightning hits the sky, and I always hear somebody saying Iris as bolt lightning flashes by. We get Libra being like, let's fuck up the rogues, get them on our side. Then we cut to Inertia in the prison.
Again, Libra is so crime Bible-y where he's having like a sermon and he's like, evil comes, evil.
So is he the main villain of Final Crisis, or is he...
He is the main villain of the first half,
Okay.
and then it's Darkseid.
Okay, because he's foretelling, because they even mentioned Darkseid
Yeah.
later, and they're like,
That, like-
oh, you're trying to bring him back? He's like, I just worship evil, guys. I don't know what you're saying.
The thing that I really like about the scene is it's like he's going on about the rock is the first murder weapon from Cain and Abel, and the world
Again,
is littered with it.
goddamn.
And it's super dramatic.
Yep.
And they get this little mirror, and it's got a message in it, and it's Captain Cold being like, "Have fun with the heat coming your way for taking out the Martian. It don't make you special, Libra. Sure, you might doll it up with some evangelical edge and promise of spiritual enlightenment. Hell, we all need that." But we don't need it from you. The answer is no. We ain't joining up. And
Cold out.
And I love that. Like, that to me showcases why the rogues are so great. Because when villains get super bombastic, they're still just like these dickheads that are in their little hideout. And they're
Yeah.
like, let's rob banks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're kind of like lovable dickheads in a way.
Yeah.
Which, again, speaks to size problem with some of them.
Yeah.
So what happens is a bolt of red lightning hits Inertia while he's being moved by the warden of that prison.
And we do get the warden he's trying to transfer him to Iron Heights, and he says the same thing you guys have been saying the whole time. It's so fucking stupid that the Flash leaves this shit in a public museum.
Yeah, a fucking speedster that is just potentially temporarily frozen here.
That's why it's always weird, because I don't know if this is him, like Jeff Johns saying "fuck you, Mark Waid, this is stupid" or not. Like,
But he didn't say. Oh, actually, maybe it might have been because he, at least when he time held Zoom, they put him in prison. Whereas you don't
Yeah.
time held someone and put them in the same place with like the cosmic treadmill.
Like, I don't know how much of this is like a lot of this is feels like it's retconning Guggenheim's run, who's the guy who wrote Bart when he died.
And that run's actually pretty good. He does a lot with that very shitty premise.
Yeah. I actually read the issues with Bart died. I thought it was pretty good, but
Yeah.
it's funny because like that's why I'm not sure if Jeff Johns is trying to glorify the rogues sometimes, because it feels like Guggenheim just ditches the entire concept of the morality stuff. And it has him kill Bart, but then here Jeff Johns is trying to bring it back. So I'm never really sure how much Jeff Johns is buying into that bullshit or not.
He like loves to come in and fix things, and the thing is, like, I like it because most of the things, in my opinion, that he tries to fix were bad, so it like works. But like some people like just absolutely hate it, and like I get it.
So Inertia breaks free because of the red lightning, and now he's like super edgelord Iborton mode now.
He's a Mark Millar character now. Yeah. He's like, I was frozen, but my mind, I could think fast. You know what I thought about? Different ways to kill people. Hundreds, thousands, millions.
They say some myths that the human intestine can be stretched over 20 miles. Let's find out together. As he's fucking murdering.
It is one of those things that I think if you were frozen in time now, you might go insane and want revenge on everyone. But he was already like this before, so I'm like, fuck this guy anyway.
Yep.
And also, he does just remind you of me, at least. He reminds me of like Superboy Prime / Mark Millar characters. Like, I'm just such a fucking asshole.
Edgy kid character that's like, I'm gonna ruin your life.
So then we cut back to the Pied Piper, who the reason why he broke into the police station was the Trickster had been killed in a very terrible book called Countdown to Final Crisis, and
Did we not read that?
No, it's very.
We read
it's
Countdown
52
to...
issues, and it's.
Did we
We
not
read
read
Countdown to Infinite Crisis, right?
Oh my fucking god, they have a countdown for each one?
One funny thing is countdown to Final Crisis when I found out Pied Piper was gay, and it's because Trickster keeps making gay jokes the entire time to Pied Piper.
Yeah.
It's not a good.
That's one of my least favorite
group
things
read of it in our Discord.
By you pointing out a character's a minority by like having another character disparage the minority. You're like,
yeah,
cool.
It's not good. Yeah. So anyway, he had broken into the police department to get the Trickster's last will and testament, which looks blank, but he wrote it in invisible ink, and it has all of the like the rogue full profiles, how their tech works, location of all their safe houses, all their family, and it's even more comprehensive than what the rogues know about. And Piper is basically saying, I was undercover with the rogues trying to stop them from doing something big. I was unable to stop them from killing Bart. I have to make this right.
Because I like that he was supposed to be like, he was the protector of like all the Flashes, or of like, Wally and Bart. And now he's like, oh my god, Bart Allen will never be replaced. Like this is.
I assume this is another Jeff Johns fix because from what I read, Trickster was just, Piper was just another member of the Rogues during that run. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
And that was editorial because they wanted Countdown to Infinite Crisis to have Piper and Trickster on the run. That was one of the major plots. So, like, Johns had to be like, I spent years making them, like, these nuanced good guys, and this happened.
That's why
so this is him, like, trying to walk
hate
that way.
And I was like, I really don't want... Because Heatwave being a villain, I'm like, I guess a guy that falls off the wagon all the time could be a villain, but it's like, don't do this to Piper.
Yeah.
Don't do my boy dirty.
Piper had been a good guy for, like, since like the 80s at this point, and it's like that's real. That's when
I think
like,
you need some examples in the world of villains that can reform and stay reformed, rather than always being like all villains are bad forever.
Marvel definitely does this better, and this is why, like, hey, editorial, why don't you let the writers write the story and you just edit them?
Yeah.
So it ends with Inertia being like, I'm gonna go be edgelord and kill Bart, Wally's kids now.
I'm gonna kill children.
Yeah, so now Zoom shows up.
Yeah, it ends Hunter Zolomon Zoom, and he's like, you're gonna be, you have to make him, you can't just kill his kids for no reason. You have to do it to make him a better hero, and you have to be a better villain to make him a better hero. So you're gonna become Kid Flash now, and he gives him a Kid Flash costume.
I was so excited that Zoom showed up, and I was also like, I can't believe that this man in a yellow suit, that I can feel so much like love and excitement to see him again. I feel like that's what you successfully did to me, is you made me really like Reverse Flash, just like the idea of like this guy a lot, especially Zoom. I like Zoom a lot.
Awesome. That really heartens me, especially after editing last week's episode where you guys were less excited about it.
Inertia was just like, I'm just like, this is just such a shitty villain. But when Zoom showed up, I'm like, good. I want someone interesting here. He's also still doing like his time stuttering stuff.
Yeah,
he's a lot of fun.
He's very much feels like a continuation of the because it's Jeff Johns still.
Yes.
It very much feels like a sequel to that story arc.
That's
He's
also
been
why
off the
I felt
book
like
for a couple of years at this point. Like, he left the book in like 2003, 2004, and this was like 2007. And like, I always like when I recommend a Flash read, it's like skip from Rogue War to this.
So the second issue of the Rogues' Revenge starts out with the Rogues trying to figure out about Libra, right? They are...
yeah, what's this place to break
what
it
are they doing?
Libra, it's like was if he set up his own rogues version of the rogues with the basically a bunch of chillbanes like that just
and they go to see their tailor, I guess. There's a guy who makes
I'll show some respect. That's Jambi.
Okay,
Jambi,
so
their tailor,
makes like the supervillain suits, and he's like an engineer, because he's like, I can make a suit that can resist 5,000 degrees, so Heatwave can...
This is just all BM the entire time. They're just so rude, because they get in here, and then they've like lit Captain Cold. His sister had a costume, and they like lit it on fire, and there's a note. Oh no, there's a note on it that just says, "Who's next, Cold?" And then Heatwave melts it, while Captain Cold also like freezes it in anger. And then they see Jambi tied up, and he's been beaten to death, and he has a mirror taped.
No, he's alive.
He's alive.
Oh.
Yeah. And then they go and they find out about these new rogues, and they're like, I'm Chill, I'm Mirror Man,
I think they're intentionally supposed to be like dumb looking knockoffs.
Very
like they look like cosplay kids.
It's literally everyone has a mirror of themselves. That's like not even that far. Like Mirror Man as opposed to Mirror Master.
Weather
Witch as opposed to Weather Wizard.
Yeah.
I think Weather Witch is a cool name.
Yeah, I actually I like
Storm.
Weather Witch. I like Weather Witch, and I like the fucking Heatwave ripoff. He looks like the Human Bomb. Just like
he does look cool. And they also say, hey, we have not only are we working for Libra and fuck you, we're your replacements, but we have your dad, Captain Cold, and we're gonna kill your dad if you come after us. And Captain Cold's like, you fucking idiots, I'm gonna come kill you. And
he says, fuck you, kid. I'm gonna find you, I'm gonna kill you, and then I'm gonna kill my dad myself.
And then they look confused, like, what?
Yeah, I liked that touch. So then we cut to Zoom beating up Inertia, and he's like, "You're not."
She's like, "I'm not putting on a costume," and Zoom is basically like the rough father figure, beating him until he does what he says. Say, "You gotta put on this suit. You're gonna like it, boy."
Yeah, he's like, "Whose side are you on?" He's like, "I'm on my own side."
Yeah. He's like,
and he says, like, you were cloned from Bart Allen. You became twisted and obsessed with finding your own identity, but you failed, and now you want his. So take it. And he's like, I don't want to be Kid Flash. And he's like, take it, and I'll teach you.
And then he says, "Why do you want me to put this on?" And he's like, "I don't. Libra does." And then I'm like, "Oh, he just works for Libra." That
Yeah,
made
that's
me
what
sad.
I didn't like too, because Libra looks so lame when he was introduced.
Yes.
He was like, I got a staff that's about balancing scales, and I proselytize
Also,
about evil.
Zoom was cool because he's like, "I want to make heroes better," whereas Libra's like, "I'm literally Crime Bible." So I'm like,
So
why would
okay,
Zoom
here's
work for him?
So they explain this later,
Yep.
but I think it's easier to just talk about it now. The main thing, Libra wants he wants the rogues because this is like a meta thing. Every major crisis revolves around the Flashes, and like Final Crisis did as well. And
It's funny because that's not really true. Only Countdown. I mean, Crisis Infinite Earths did. Infinite Crisis.
I mean,
they stopped
yeah.
Superboy Prime for a couple of issues, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, but like Final Crisis was supposed to be like the culmination of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Like they're supposed to bookend it, but he's like the rogues. Libra is like the rogues are the best at fighting the Flashes, so the Flashes are probably going to be important. So I need the rogues on my side, and basically he wants Zoom to train Inertia so the rogues can practice on killing speedsters. That's like the main thing. And
But why would Zoom do it?
well, so Zoom talks about it in one of the later issues where he says, like, Libra has this large scale to test the heroes more than they've ever been tested before because he has, like, this is the time evil's gonna win.
Mm-hmm.
And Zoom, like, I don't remember exactly what he says, but it's something to the effect of, like, and the heroes that survive and make it through this will be the only ones strong enough to stop what, like, this is the apocalypse, so they have to learn this is the time to step up
he says,
and do
like,
what has
whoever
to be done.
survives will be stronger. And the fact that he uses like the term survive to that, it gets me like the dissonance where you guys are like, well, he doesn't want to kill people, he just wants to make them better, when he's helping like train people to actually kill the Flash. Well, he's like, don't kill them, but I'm also going to help you train you to kill them.
Well,
I feel
he's
like
not
Zoom would
training
be
anyone to
way
kill the
mo-
Flash. He's training Inertia. Like, I think that he's trying to make Inertia a better villain.
So Zoom is still a villain. It's just that he has his own.
To me, it
Yeah.
always seems like Zoom would just work on his own. I don't know. I mean, I don't know Zoom enough. I only read like again.
Well, this
3
is
issues
also
of
what Sly was talking about last time, that part of the problem was after Johns left the book, Zoom just became the stand-in for a Flash villain and was put on the Secret Society of Supervillains and the Injustice League.
Remember when Uncle Sam and Human Bomb and those guys got killed? It was Zoom that killed him. Why was Zoom on that team?
Yes.
Who was the why was
Yeah,
Zoom, like,
and
Wait,
that's the thing is,
what?
like,
Wait, what?
remember Uncle Sam when he died
Yeah.
in Infinite Crisis? He was
Yeah.
killed by Zoom.
Zoom killed
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, why?
Yeah.
Why was Zoom? Because the writer was like, I don't give a fuck. It's just fucking Reverse Flash.
Oh, right, because that's when I first got. I was like, Professor Zoom, and they're like, no, it's Zoom. I'm like, there's a difference, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but like that's the kind of thing that even though Johns did write Infinite Crisis, it's the kind of thing that like editorial decided he's the big Flash villain, which it doesn't work when it's such a personal villain.
Yeah,
so I think,
yeah.
I think this is Johns is trying to explain why he's working for Libra, and I don't think it 100% works, but it's like close, so it's fine. You know,
That's-
John
just
is making
excited.
the best way what he can do. Like editorial,
Yeah.
hands him a shit sandwich and he's trying to make it work.
It's
Yeah,
fine.
But I'm also like excited to see Zoom act like Zoom again, even if it's like the setup is a little shaky.
Yeah.
I still like seeing the way he trains Inertia, and there's a lot of cool stuff in here.
So we get this knockoff rogues team being like, yeah, what a bunch. He's an asshole. He's not gonna come get us. And then they show up through the wall because Mirror Master. And
Through the reflection on like the door of
Yeah,
this
whatever.
meat locker room that they're in.
And then we get this cool like intro where they're like, you don't know me, you don't know us, that's your first mistake. And they basically have this showdown where it's like the knockoffs versus the main ones so they can show how cool the main ones are. So like
Yep.
Heatwave is fighting what's the guy's name? I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, the fire,
Whatever.
pyro.
The friction the Flash hits when he's moving 20 times the speed of sound can't even warm up his crimson cowl, but my fire can melt his boots.
I'm like, what?
You think about that.
What fire can if he can go 20 times the speed of sound and not get warmed up? I'm like, what fire?
The
is
fact that
this?
it's still like drawn as like orange too, I'm like, I don't know if it'd be orange.
Whatever.
Yeah, that would be white at the minimum.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it'd be like the
whatever.
sun.
The sun, right? That's what I was thinking. It would kill everyone. Whatever. it's fine. So
Yeah, Weather Wizard fights Weather Witch and like zaps her because he's like, oh, "Who's your favorite author?" And she's like, "I'm not much of a reader." And I guess he's like a big like Mark Twain fan.
because she was like, just fuck me instead or whatever.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, he didn't have a rogue spotlight, but he did have a pretty major plot during Johns' run where he finds out he had an illegitimate son. And that's gonna factor in here, but like I wish he got a rogue spotlight because I really like the Weather Wizard and I think he's cool, and I just love that she tries to hit on him and he's like, "You're a dumb bitch." And
yeah,
he
you don't
kills her.
read? Bye.
Hate
Just in case the listeners don't know what the wizard is, he has weather control powers, just like his name implies.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. I don't know how much.
yeah.
And then so they all just kill their counterparts easily. And
Yeah, Captain Cold like breaks off. He does his thing, the Flash thing, where he makes the wide like beam of ice, and so the other Captain Cold goes to punch him. His arm freezes, then he just breaks off his arm and then kills him.
Yeah. And
Then he
then we
goes
go back to
see his
Zoom.
dad. The thing like the Zoom stuff is just like Pied Piper watching them. It's like it's gonna be a concert you're gonna remember, and the entire time too, I'm just like at least from those 3 issues, I think it speaks to the success of introducing Zoom. I'm like, no one can fight Zoom. I don't know what Pied Piper's doing, because even if you're like, I can fight like speedsters, again, Zoom's is like broken from time. I wouldn't try and touch this guy at all. Like, I just let him do whatever he's doing and not fight him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
then Captain Cold does go to see his dad in there.
Yeah, and you get this really like I really like this exchange because this made like the Cold issue like it felt very worth it to read it, because then you get them like Captain Cold arguing with his dad, talking about like the sister's death. It's like, Lisa's dead, and the dad's like, I hadn't heard, I'm sorry. And he's like, look me in the eyes and tell me. And it's like the dad can't do it.
Yeah.
This made me like the Cold issue more too.
Yeah, I agree for sure. That's why I wanted to include this specifically to bookend the episode with those 2 things, because I think that they work really well in tandem.
Yep.
He like is like, trying to deal with his dad, and he's like, he punches his dad in the face.
Yeah, well, he's saying like Lisa would still be alive if you hadn't chased her off. And Captain Cold says, I didn't chase her off. She ran away. And he's saying like, you're her big brother. You're supposed to, you let her follow you into that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so it's basically, they're blaming each other for like killing her.
And it's a very I like this conversation a lot, because it's like he's like, I wasn't a good father, I may have been rough, and he's like, may have been, and he's like, but it's not my fault you turned out the way you did. It ain't my fault what happened to your sister. That's on you. Her death's on you. And I really like that there's these both really like cold macho guys being like, nothing's my fault. It's all the other person's fault.
Yeah.
And they basically just hit a standstill where they just stare at each other, and the dad goes, so what? What now?
And Cold can't do it. And so he just walks away
He can't
and tells
kill him.
E-Wave to kill his dad.
But even before that, he's like, it ain't bad enough you dragged me and your sister into your little game. Now you think putting me in an ice cube is going to make everything all right? You think that'll make you feel better?
Yeah.
You're just like your mother was. Weak. One bruise and the waterworks started. You were the same way after she left. One bruise. And that's when he punches him, and he's like, when's the last time you cried, Lenny? And that's when Captain Cold walks away, and he's like, you do it, Mick. And Heatwave just roasts.
I like that touch, because I was like, where it's gonna be kind of cliche, like he gets to get revenge on his dad or whatever.
Yeah.
But the fact that he gets that chance, he couldn't even take it. That's a nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they
I
even
agree.
say like, as he's burning alive, and he's like, when the wizard says, feel better, and Captain Cold's looking at the flames, he just says, no. But it was
Yeah.
worth
But
a
it was
shot.
worth a shot.
Yeah, worth a shot. They burn the whole place down. They're like, fuck these people.
And they
then,
basically
of course,
like,
we get...
we gotta go find Inertia and we gotta kill him. Like, that's their plan, is to go kill Inertia to make it even, because it's like, oh, like, we accidentally killed Kid Flash, so we'll kill his nemesis, and then hopefully
We do
they
get a
won't
brief
mind.
cameo by the best Flash film, Gorilla.
Gorilla Grodd on the computer. Beep, 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 boop, boop. He's like...
The fact
I
that
love-
Grodd's working with Libra, that's cult guy, I was like, thank God. These idiots deserve each other.
And why does Libra have Grodd working the navigation or whatever?
I have
Grodd
no
is so
idea.
smart.
I
Phil.
think
He's the smartest man.
he might just be looking at the screens, like his face is next
But,
to it.
but
No,
I got
but
the
Libra
impression-
says, I want the rogues, Grodd. Whatever.
Yeah, Grodd is
I
supposed
have
to
no
be
idea.
smarter than the average person based on what I've
That
read.
too.
Is he?
Yeah.
And the one thing I just wanted to mention is the rogues also decide that they're going to go to the observatory where Weather Wizard killed his brother.
Because that's the last place people are going to look for them, because they know Weather Wizard
Yeah,
doesn't like it. And then we get the surprise twist at the very end where he's like, the rogues will join us or I'll kill Weather Wizard's son. Brum, brum, brum. And he's holding the baby.
Yeah.
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 Cool.
Fucking Libra. This guy, like, I wonder what I'd think of Final Crisis, because I'm like, this guy's an asshole.
Libra, I adore Final Crisis. It's one of my favorite books
Yeah.
ever. Libra fucking sucks
He
so bad.
sucks, thank
He's
God.
not a good character.
I forgot how much he looks like. I forgot how much he looks like Taskmaster from Deadpool.
Yeah,
really
I feel
does.
like it's always 50-50 with you guys, where I'm like, this guy sucks, and then you'd be like, actually, he does the coolest thing I've ever read in comics, and he's my favorite
Didn't you
villain.
know Libra was raised by 2 monkeys in the woods, and
One of them was Grodd, and the other was Solivar.
Because these are very extreme concepts a lot of times. So either you love it or you make it work or you don't. Like if it's like it's gonna suck or it's gonna be great. Like it depends on like how good the writers are.
either you die a villain
just-
or a hero or live long enough.
But
See
it's
yourself
funny because
become
Final Crisis is one of those books that like I always thought about doing for the show, but I don't think it would ever work because it's just so. We would need like 8 hours.
Oh my
Yeah, it'll have
god.
to be like a 52 kind of thing, probably.
Oh my god. For
Even though
something
it's
that's
only
not
7
good.
issues. No, I love it.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
but-
don't say it's not good to Ryan. He'll fucking smack
Okay.
your shit up.
It's. I mean,
I just
it's Grant
assumed all
Morrison writing an
crises were
event.
bad.
It's wild. But anyway,
Hey,
Okay.
didn't you like Identity Crisis, or am I misremembering now?
I liked it, but again, a lot of people hate it, so I'm like, I just assume
but
all of them are bad.
imagine if Grant Morrison was writing it. Though.
Ooh, that you got me intrigued. Anyway,
But anyway, the final issue of our Flash saga.
yes. So now they go to a Weather Wizard's, like his brother's domain. We get like a brief flashback that tunes you in on it, where it's like his brother's like, I gotta turn you in. This is for your own good, and he killed his brother in order not to be turned in.
And his brother's the one who invented the weather wand that lets him control the weather because he was like a weather scientist.
Oh.
And he steals the wand and kills his brother.
I have a question that's just
Yes.
related to this more Zoom inertia stuff. Is Thaddeus Thawne actually related to Eobard Thawne, or did they just give him that name because he's an asshole?
He's an asshole.
So, Bart's mom is a Thawne.
what?
Yeah. But he's so Bart's mom is an ancestor of Eobard Thawne. Eobard Thawne's from further in the future.
Yeah.
What a coincidence.
I mean, you know, what do you
A lot of DC is also fucking very fate defined. Like
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
They have to have these. So it's like that doesn't make like if you like watch Battlestar Galactica, I don't think you can bitch too much about that because it's very much that kind of thing. Because it's very much religion does play a role in DC more than it does in Marvel. It's not just
Okay.
spontaneous.
Yeah, crime
acts
Bible,
of-
Phil.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they go inside, and I like that. Like Captain Cold's like, we'll make it quick in here because he knows it's not hurting. Like it's hurting Weather Wizard to be here. And he's telling him like, just hold it together. And he's like, I'm trying. As he's like still seeing his brother, and like even the trickster's just he's goofing off and stuff. So he gets zapped by lightning, and so. This is when we get like a whole bunch of exposition about like what this place was used for, and then Mirror Master's just looking through millions of mirrors trying to find Inertia, and he finds him. And
One thing I wanted to point out that triggered me a little bit. They keep calling Bart Kid Flash. I'm like, it's kind of offensive. He died as a Flash. Like he died.
Yeah.
that's a good point.
I wonder if this is because Johns was also writing another miniseries called Final Crisis Legion of Three Worlds, where Bart was about to come back from the dead. Because that's the same kind of thing that Johns was like, the Teen Titans franchise has been destroyed, and in this story, he brings back Superboy and Kid Flash, and he's like, here, you can have your fucking franchise back, because nobody gives a shit without these characters.
Speaking of
So I wonder if he
Wait,
was...
he dies and then comes back
yeah,
right
Immediately?
away?
like a few years down the line, this was a few years after.
Yeah, because we skipped ahead a couple years.
Yeah, Bart dies a little bit after Infinite Crisis. He comes back for around Final Crisis, so that's a few years.
Yeah.
gap.
Yeah.
But speaking about one funny note though, when I checked the Wikipedia entry for this stuff, I saw Superboy Prime found Bart's grave, and he crossed out Fast Man Alive and wrote down Dumbest Boy Dead.
Yeah, that's true. He did do that.
Superboy, bro, jeez.
What a dickhead.
He is Sly.
Hey, Ron was
gonna
right.
do
I
that
hate him
to
because it's me.
Ryan's grave.
It's like a mirror of me. I'm like, I don't want to see that. Stop showing it.
And so Zoom's trying to teach Inertia how to snap to make the sonic booms and stuff, and he's really pushing.
Well, because what he's trying to do is push him from, instead of relying on the Speed Force, to rely on the like time stuff.
which
he's
I
trying to
also
teach him-
didn't like, because I was like I feel like you have to somehow get disconnected from time.
Yeah,
to
is
fall
that a
into
trainable skill?
Instead of being like, everyone can be Zoom if you try hard enough. I'm like, no?
Yeah,
I thought the
not
same thing.
Well, I think it's more because I'm not sure if he's actually trying to disconnect him from
No,
time.
he does, because he
or
says
just teaching him to.
He does tell him once he's doing it. He's like, once he's being successful at it a little bit.
You can move
He's
as
like-
fast or as slow as you want.
I don't think this fully makes sense. I just view it as like abstract, like DBZ power stuff, where it's like
Yeah.
he's just siphoning off Zoom's power pretty much. That's all it really is.
I think he does say like I'm
Inertia
giving
says
you my
you gave me
power.
like a thread of your power, which again, like I didn't understand quite how that worked, but whatever.
Yeah.
And
I know, it's one of those things where I'm like, you have to just kind of abstract it a bit, and like Zoom has powers. Flash can share his powers.
I hate it. I don't want people to have Zooms. The more you dilute the powers and stuff, I feel like the more it doesn't become like as cool.
I think that's fair. I think that's a totally
Yeah,
fair
I
critique.
agree.
Especially with someone like Zoom, someone that's supposed to be like, he literally was wearing the Professor Zoom stuff to be as intimidating as possible. It's like, I'll give it to this asshole kid.
This is why you have a good editorial, because they make sure details like this stay intact. But
Yeah.
probably by this point, it didn't matter anymore how Zoom's power
Yeah.
works.
So Pied Piper
I think
tries-
at this point they were like, Johns could do whatever he wants with the Flash because it's pretty much a dead franchise.
Yeah,
for a
Pied
while.
Piper tries to drop a rock on them, which I'm like, fucking, again, the fastest people in the world. You can't do that.
So it's not just that. What happens is first the rogues show up and there's fog everywhere, and he says, because they don't have they can't vibrate the way the Flash did. Zoom says, don't run. If you hit one of these train cars moving too fast, you splatter. So they immediately can't run. At least they explain why they can't just run.
I like that he says, like, when the rogues show up, he's like, rogues. I hate rogues. Zoom
I like
says.
that a lot.
Yeah. It makes sense that he hates them. He says, like, specifically, too, it's not just that he hates rogues from his time as Hunter Zolomon, although I would like a mention of that, but he says they're a waste of time. They're meant to only occupy. They're not supposed to, like, strive them to be better.
You don't contribute to their growth.
Yeah. And so he says, you should have retired a long time ago. He's about to, like, snap in front of Captain Cold's face, and then Pied Piper uses mind control music to, like, to freeze them in place, but then Libra shows up behind Piper to be like, aha, surprise, I'm here now, and I stab you, and now look, I'm holding baby Weather Wizard. And he's like, join me or the baby gets it.
Yeah. And
And but it was like, I killed my brother. Fuck that baby.
But I like that when Kid Flash, Inertia is like, what's Libra doing here? And Zoom's like wasting his breath. The rogues will never be a part of this. And I like that he still has their profiles down. Like the exposition we need is Hunter being like, I understand the situation and what they will do.
To go back to what Daryl was saying, that's the kind of character consistency that makes this that really like makes a character stand out, because
Yes. Yeah.
like, because if he was just Professor, like if it was just like any other writer who'd just be, I'm here to fight Flash, so I gotta get a psychic. But here Jeff Johns trying to keep tying it into what we know about Hunter Zolomon.
So then Inertia's like, enough, who gives a damn? He's impatient, and then he runs over.
A lot of what Inertia is, he's like just like this. Everyone's trying to have like these complex motivations, and
Well, I want to talk about that complex motivation real quick. So, Wither Wizard is like, when I was a child, there was only one person who looked out for me. One person who wanted to help me. My brother. My brother was the only good thing in this world, but I murdered him. I murdered my brother because I couldn't stand the idea of going back to prison. If I killed my brother, if I electrocuted the only person who ever cared about me, what makes you think I care anything about that child? And Libra's like, then prove me wrong. Say no. And the rest of the gang asks Captain Cold, like, Cold? And he says, this is Martin's call. And I really like that the rest of the gang knows, like, this is up to him. Whatever he wants to do, we'll follow his lead. And there's like this showdown between, there's like 5 or 6 panels of Weather Wizard and Libra just staring at each other, and there's like lightning everywhere.
and
that's when
is sweating more and more.
Yeah, and it's I think that this page is really, really cool. And then Inertia just goes, oh, enough, who gives a damn? And he grabs the baby and snaps his finger.
And Sonic booms the baby. I was like, because the baby doesn't appear after this, I'm like, oh my god, did they just show like a baby get obliterated? Because they don't even show any like remains of the baby. The baby's
anything.
just
Yeah,
gone.
it's pretty fucking
It's funny because
bizarre.
this feel like a Mark, like Inertia feel like a Mark Millar character.
Yeah.
Like you know how we say like Mark Millar characters don't feel like real human beings. This is like a bunch of real human beings. Then like a Mark Millar character saying, "Shut up, kill a baby." That's what we do.
I'll Sonic boom a baby into nothing.
But I think this makes sense because Zoom grabs him and he's like, what did you do? Like, why did you do this? And he's like, I'm going to be your sidekick. I'm not Inertia. I'm not Kid Flash. I'm Kid Zoom, and I'm going to cause a whole lot of tragedy. And I like the idea of him him taking the definitive Zoom moment,
Yeah.
but doing it for no reason
He's like,
instead of for like,
hey, yeah, you've been saying tragedy helps, so I'm gonna just traumatize everyone.
And
yeah, but like I like the idea of like when, not that killing Wally's unborn children wasn't super edgy, but like that still had some sort of narrative purpose and a character motivation that like why he was doing it. Whereas Kid Zoom is just like the Mark Millar version of that plot. And I like it. He's like, this is your greatest hits, right? This is your move. This is what you do. And he's like, that's not the point. That's not why we
He
do
says
what we
tragedy
do."
cannot be random; it must be calculated. And then Kid Zoom now is like, no, you're not doing it far enough. I don't want them to work through it. I want them to lose, and I want them to be in pain. And he grabs Zoom, and he's like, hey, you gave me a string of your power. I'm gonna unravel
Steal the rest of it.
Yep. And he's
And
supposed to push him back.
He versus Solomon back to when he's in the wheelchair. And so all of a sudden, Zoom is gone, and now it's just Hunter Solomon in the wheelchair saying, no, I need my powers. I need purpose.
And then we get the ultimate standoff here, the Rogues versus Kid Zoom now.
Because the Rogues are like, this is what the Rogues say, they're like, babies and cripples, you've got real class, kids. So they're still just like dickheads.
Yeah.
But what's crazy, I guess it's not that crazy. They fight speedsters all the time. I'm just like,
Yeah.
he's unhinged from time, so I'm like, it seems different. But whatever.
I feel like the problem with like this compared to like last week's reading is it built Zoom up as such a threat that like Wally needed to get unhinged from time to stop him because literally no one could even see him to stop him. And then we get this thing where it's just like a bunch of Flash villains show up to stop this kid.
And it's stuff like, if he, like you were saying, if the Flash, multiple Flashes cannot see how fast he is,
yeah.
by the time Heatwave lays down fire for him to step in, I'm like, they're all dead. They're all dead.
Yeah.
That's probably a byproduct of this being only 3 issues long. And I'm good.
So, yeah, I have my 2 explanations for this. One is the meta bullshit fansplaining. This is why it doesn't bother me. And the other one, I think, is the, like, the overall big picture of what I think Johns is trying to do in, like, a meta sense. And in the first way, I mean, they mentioned that Cold laid out that cold field and slowed everybody down earlier. And they mentioned it again here. And I also think because Hunter had given Inertia part of his powers, I think he was able to like catch up to him in ways that Wally wasn't, because Wally was working with the Speed Force and this guy has a connection to time. Personally, though, I think that Jeff Johns was pretty fed up with Hunter being used as generic speedster, and I think this was him taking him off the map.
Oh, so he very much, because Hunter gets depowered here and he doesn't get his powers back at the end of this. So you're saying that he did that just to be like, stop using Zoom.
That's what I think.
But I was thinking he wanted to kill off Inertia.
Also that.
Well, because that's what happens here. So that as they now fight him, it's like you have all these Flash villains, and they fight him the way they fight the Flash normally. And at
Slow
the
him
end,
down.
it's like,
Pied Piper uses the music to disorient him, and then they all point their guns, and just like, again, back when they pissed on Professor Zoom's grave by shooting his corpse, they all point their guns and just shoot at him and say, this is for a fucked up year. They say, like, this isn't for, like, my son or the Kid Flash. No, this is just for this fucked up year.
Yeah, it's fine.
It could have been better, because, like, it does, by this point, the Zoom's time powers are so fucked. I mean, you know.
I mean, I also take, like, this guy has had these powers for 30 seconds. I feel like it's okay for him to not be as good at it as Hunter was.
I just think the whole unhinged from time thing, I always was going to rub me the wrong way, because I'm like, who cares if it's cold or anything? If you can go forward and backwards in time, I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like,
But he wasn't created as a villain for anyone besides Flash.
Yeah, and I also feel like Zoom made sense being like somewhat merciful with it, because he was trying to specifically do things
right.
Like, whereas like a psychopath with that power could just go back in time and kill everyone's moms.
Yeah.
Where Zoom was like trying to
when
propel.
The comes back.
Yeah.
And then the episode just ends with like Libra being like, "Evil's gonna win. You'll see."
Well,
someday.
one thing that Libra says, he's like, Barry Allen's coming back in Final Crisis, right? Doesn't that piss you off? And they drop off Kid Zoom's body at the police station with a rock that says "Tell the Flash we're even" from the Rogues, and they're just like, there's just a couple scenes of them just like complaining that Barry Allen sucks. They're like we we had the old man Jay Garrick and Wally convinced it was all fun and games, and I talked about this in the very first Flash episode where Weather Wizard's like, it wasn't with him, McCulloch. He treated us like he did Grodd or Kadabra. He never gave us a break. And they're like, when he thought I was reformed, he helped me a little, but like for the most part, he's just an asshole, and he treats all bad guys the same. And if Barry Allen's back, then we're just fucked.
Mm-hmm. So he says that to be like, where we got to stay together as the Rogues. We can't disband now.
Yeah. Because, like, Wally would play with us and realize, like, oh, we're nuanced characters, but Barry's a cop, and he hates all villains the same, no matter what degree.
It's just hard. It's always hard for me to swallow when you have these serial killers in a room being like, I don't believe in evil, just different shades of gray. I'm like, yeah, okay, but like, you're all serial killers.
Serial killers would say that.
I know, but I feel like they're more criminals that commit homicide than serial. They're not murmur.
Well,
they're not murmur. You're right, but
they are serial homicide.
But like they killed like these other murderers. Like I'm not saying they're good guys, but
Mirror Master killed FBI agents. That's
but Mirror Master's also like the worst of all of them.
I know, but housing a mass cop killer.
Yeah, that's true. But like I understand why they think they have a moral code.
Yeah, right. Because they're not actually like killing 15-year-old teenagers like a serial killer like I'm just killing because I want to kill. They're mostly not.
Yeah, I don't mind them thinking that. I just I hope the implication is that we're supposed to agree with it because I don't think that's...
I don't think Jeff Johns wants us to think these guys are like good guys.
Yeah, cool maybe, but not good guys.
Yeah.
Ryan, I hate what they did to Zoom. I mean, it makes sense. Like your explanation, I'm like, okay, I can see it now. Like if you've been using Zoom this whole time, and like inertia's really annoying. It makes sense to depower him. Yeah, and because I was reading about like all the other Zoom stuff because he did a whole bunch of things. At some point, he teams up with the Reverse Flash to fight three Flashes.
That's when Wally's kids get miscarried?
Yeah, because I heard about that he stops his own sonic boom back in time from killing the kids.
It's again one of those things that like I really like the way that story plays out, but it's like you got to buy into a lot of stuff.
Man, it's one of those things where I'm like, the villains at their most intimidating when they're like inimitable, when you don't have someone that's like them in the world. It's sort of like how with Batman, there's no villain that's like the Joker. No one does what he does, at least from what I've read and seen, that there's no one that's like him. So he always stays terrifying whenever like he shows up. Whereas like here, First off, I didn't like Inertia. Maybe it's because, again, I don't like the Professor Zoom stuff of just like, I'm an asshole, that's my trait. I just want to see people in pain. But like, I'm Mark Millaring it now rather than just like, carving someone's head out of a snow hill. At least it's like fun dickery.
It's one of those things I've actually evolved a lot even since we started the show on how I feel about a lot of things. And one of the things that like not only constant reboots and constant relaunches that like in the modern age are like unbearable, but also like when I started reading a lot more manga, I'm starting to really come around more to the idea. And also like John Marie in our Discord has talked to me a lot about this, that like I'm coming around more to the idea that like you could just not ever bring back some characters and they could have one really good story and that's good enough. Like I really love Blitz and I love the way Zoom is portrayed in that story, and like I would still love him without him ever popping up again, where maybe 5 years ago I would be like, I love this character, I want characters to use him, I want him to come back. And also like having Wally come back and then done so dirty in Heroes in Crisis, like it's the same kind of, I had the same realization where I'm like, I used to get super mad about it, but now like it doesn't make me dislike the old stories anymore.
Yeah.
So like I'm starting to come more and more around.
The less you get hooked into like everything's like continuity matters a lot. Instead you look at them as individual stories where like this story is great, even if like later writers like shit on Zoom, you're still like Blitz is still good and Zoom is still intimidating.
Yeah, Zoom is still a good character.
Yes, yeah.
Whether another writer shits on him or anything like that. And it's like, it's the same thing, like comics get judged by this facet in ways that no other medium does, where like you don't think Game of Thrones is bad because like only one writer told a good story with them. Like, and like even like the show had other writers and it was terrible.
But I think that's why to me, that's like always one of my issues with loving comics like I should, is that like I feel this way with TV too, actually, that most shows should end after 2 or 3 seasons, where like the longer you drag something out, the more chance you have of it becoming shitty, and comics have the extra hurdle of having extra different writers. But I'm like, I think most TV ends up sucking too. Like, I think it ruins the show for me. It doesn't ruin it.
See, I'm starting to be able to compartmentalize it better, where it doesn't ruin it. Where it used to.
It doesn't have to ruin it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I used to be completely unable to separate them and have to make it all one big headcanon. Where now maybe it's also because I read through like basically every major franchise and I'm not diving into continuity anymore, just because like there's not a lot left for me to read. Not that I've read it all, but like there are very few stories that are worth mentioning that I haven't read. Like, I haven't read hundreds and hundreds of issues of Batman where nothing of value happens. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I'm becoming much, much better at being able to be like, that doesn't matter. Yeah. I'm able to jump off.
Yeah, right. This run was good, or this story was good. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah, I understand that.
So, overall, what did you guys think of the Flash stories that we laid out and covered today? Do you understand why I like the Flash a little more?
Yes, I do. Okay. I thought they were pretty cool. I don't think I would say he's like my favorite or anything, but I can understand being like he's pretty cool, and there's cool stuff going on with the Rogues and how they use their powers and Flash's powers and all that. You're talking about today in general, or in general?
I mean, just like overall, in general, because now we're at the end. Done. Yeah. And I really tried to spotlight the different eras where, like, a lot of people are like, well, who is, like, is it Barry? Is it Wally? Is it Bart? Is it Jay? These are all, like, really confusing. But I tried to showcase that, like, the characters all are very different.
They are distinct.
And when you read them, you could tell. They feel very different. Like, the Barry stuff to me reads very different than the Mark Waid Wally versus the Jeff Johns Wally. Even though, like, Wally still feels like one cohesive character, the different eras I tried to spotlight in a way that made it, like, to show that there's more breadth than just guy who runs fast, you know? What about you, Daryl?
So, I definitely understand more, and I greatly appreciate that you did this. I know it takes, like, a lot of time and effort trying to think about, it's like, I could include this issue, I could do this. Especially because I now really understand when you're just like, Flash doesn't have like a definitive, like there's no long Halloween of Flash, where you're showing us like some of the best parts, but it still needs to be taken in context of the larger runs. Like, even like this story with like all the backstories, there's still so much going on between like at the end of the issues and the beginning, where it's like, again, where Bart's now the Flash and Bart's dead. You also got to know that Bart's also Barry Allen's grandson from the future, and to know that you got to know Iris came back from time after she was a fat man at the trial of Barry Allen where he killed Professor Zoom. I'm like, oh my god, that's quite a lot of stuff that's intertwined there. Flash still doesn't like, I feel like I get, because it's like, I know my feelings on it, where I'm just like, I don't like Flash that much still, because I'm like, I want his powers to be more concrete, but at the same time, like,
you're not gonna get that.
I like a lot of dumb anime stuff where the powers aren't super, but at the same time, like, I also want them at least to be somewhat concrete. I like how creative he is with a lot of his powers, but it's still like, I still have a lot of the same, like, issues. I really like that you at least, like, showed more of a difference between Barry and Wally, and I like the showing of the Rogues and their backstories. And again, my favorite is Hunter Zolomon. I think he's a great character. I really like Zoom from the few instances I've seen him. I wish he was handled a lot better and more carefully, because then he could be like a really cool, intimidating character. And the thing that I think the most, that I can't get over, is that they all have the same goddamn costume. Because you guys were at least like, well, it makes sense back when Wally was the Flash, where it's like he's gonna wear Barry's stuff until he overcomes his fear of surpassing Barry, but then he's still wearing the same costume. And I kept waiting, and then they showed Kid Flash. Bart was in the same costume. I'm like, it just like, I don't know if it's just like a visual thing. I can't separate Barry and Wally that much in my head unless their costumes are like different. Again, it's like having two Batmans next to each other or something.
Their costumes are a little different, but in ways that you would only
it's like I know the
notice,
waist lightning bolts point down for Wally,
but like that's
rather-
not something that anyone, unless like I will notice, but 99% of people.
Yeah,
won't,
and it's like
you know?
I complained about like the chrome stuff not being different enough, but at least that was like distinct enough when it was drawn. Whereas like Wally just looks a lot like Barry in those things, and it's one of those things where I have to take your word for it that Wally treats his rogues differently than like Barry does, because at least again from reading like the old issues, I mean, other than him wanting to beat the shit out of Clive Yorkin, but it made sense why he wanted to do that. But it, just like I don't feel like they're as distinct to me as you would have me believe from reading.
I think it's more that Wally just has the benefit of being written in a better era. Like, not that I don't love the 70s and 80s, but like the Flash doesn't have good writing until like the early 90s.
Yeah.
You know, and like that's one thing that like a lot of like Barry as a cop stuff, like they put on him the like Silver Age black and white morality that I think works with his role as a cop.
Yeah.
But that's still a lot of that was not explicit before. It's just the way everybody was. Everybody else evolved, but Barry was dead. So they kind of just put that on him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then Barry comes back from the dead right after the story, and it's like that's not really true anymore because nobody wants to read that, you know?
Yeah.
So
I
it's
think
like
it's
this
interesting
is
in
to
like
me
a
like
contrast.
this is towards the end. Like I really like the current writer on the Flash, and I think it's the best Barry run that we've had. But it's still a pale comparison to me between like I still have yet to see a reason why Barry had to come back from the dead.
Yeah.
Like no one has convinced me that that was necessary.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Have you read any of the modern stuff, Ryan?
Of like I mean I'm currently up to date on the Flash book, and it's great, but like it doesn't have to be like there's I don't know it like I
you know,
it could be Wally, it would be still good. Barry's just boring. He's just a more boring version of Wally West.
yeah. One of the things I was thinking of while I was reading this, where I was like, you know, I give you shit for liking Guy Gardner. Guy Gardner's very distinct as Green Lantern.
Yes.
Right. I had seen some things like posts online where people are just talking about like how kind of like boring Hal is, because people were talking about like who's the best Green Lantern, and I was like, you know what? Hal is actually pretty boring. It's like a lot of those old age heroes to me are really boring, and it's like
They're
I
all
wish
Superman, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, I wish Wally had a little bit more of a distinctive. Like I enjoy him and I like seeing him. It's just I wish I had seen maybe like more of him being fun. I wish
it probably would have helped to see a lot of his more formative years, because he transitions to a more heroic character over time.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with the Flash. Like the Flash is a character that made me love comics as an ongoing medium, because like I loved Wally not for 2 stories but for 250 issues that I read. And that's something we can't do on the show. And like I tried to spotlight a little where like Return of Barry Allen has Wally just like his insecurities that Barry never had, and like things like that.
Yeah.
That like I find interesting, but like it just he's the reason why I focused on the villains is because it's easier, I think, to give you a showcase on like what this is why I think Captain Cold is cool. But like with Wally West, you gotta read it all, and that's just not something that, you know, not that every single issue is great, but like his relationship with Linda showcases like his more modern role as like he's in a partnership. He's not. She's not
I feel
just a
like
love
everything
interest, you know, like
Wally
that kind of
had was an improvement over Barry,
Yes.
absolutely. And I'm still on team Barry doesn't need it. Like Barry's only useful to me if he comes back to specifically be the old hard cop, to be like times have changed and you got to do interesting things with that. But even then, I'm like, this is like a. It's someone who's only good in comparison to Superman. Like Superman has to be there.
I don't know.
Anyway, it was like some villain where it's like this villain's only useful in comparison if these people are there. Like they can't stand on their own. You can't have individual issues.
Okay,
Where I'm like, I think Barry would only be good if to juxtapose. Like I don't want to see a Barry issues just about him. I want to see his like actions opposed to Wally. Sort of like when they were together back when he was like Eobard Thawne. Together, like doing stuff, and he was concerned about being the Flash.
I mean, the most interesting thing Barry Allen ever did was die. And like I know that sounds mean, but like having this like pure Silver Age character die before the modern age edged him up a little bit. Like there was he snaps Reverse Flash's neck, but even that was still in like the book made it clear like he didn't have a choice, like this is lawful good. Like we discussed it, but like it was still like none of us were like Barry deserves to go to prison. We were just like he deserves to like have a fair trial.
But
you know?
it also like highlights that was like the transition point from
but like
edgy stories from
exactly. But having a Silver Age morality, I like forever like frozen as the rest of the universe evolves past them. It's almost like I find Barry Allen to be like the George Washington of the DC universe, where like yes, there were problems, but like we look at them as such idols that like I think they work better in history as this like focus on the farewell address and like all these kind of things that like they work better than if we were to bring George Washington back and be like, but look at the way he treated his slaves.
Yeah, it have to be something. If you bring him back, it's like you do it to deconstruct rather than continue to deify them. Like that stance is weird to me.
Exactly. And that's why like when they launched the Flash TV show, which like I watched the first 2 seasons and really enjoyed it. In the first episode, the end of the show stinger is setting up Barry's gonna die in Crisis on Infinite Earths. Like that's the interesting thing that he does.
But I appreciated you doing this, and congratulations. I like Zoom.
Yes. What about you, Sly? What did you think?
I appreciate this because I like majority of the comics we've read. I voiced my issues about the Grodd issues and like the road issues.
Fucking Grodd.
But it was interesting to see. I don't know if I illustrate. I don't know if I made a compelling argument for myself, but I do think you make very compelling arguments for each of these stories, and I find it interesting to be able to have these stories I've read before. Not all of these issues, but I've read a lot of these issues beforehand, and I never understood the appeal. So it's really interesting for me to. I think you haven't fully flipped on everything, but I could see why people like these issues. I think you maybe understand your perspective a lot.
They were more interesting with Ryan.
I definitely
here.
appreciate hearing that. Well, I mean, what's not? Am I right, fellas?
It's interesting, and just to talk about what you guys were talking about, it's interesting because Flash kind of shows the potential and limitations of comic books.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because Wally changed the costume to that chrome thing, and that was too much for people. Like, and that was annoying me too, because I always, obviously I grew up in the '90s. And but growing up in these '90s comics specifically, I always felt the same way. Like you should have like new updated costumes. And stuff. I find that cool. But that was too much for people back then. Like, well, you can have Wally, but you can't have a new costume. You gotta have the exact same Flash costume. And then eventually it was you can't even have you can't even have Wally. You have to have Bart. You have to have Barry exactly. Like it showed like the pushback that happens when people don't want to let go. And
so dumb. And I sorry to harp on the costume thing, but like at the end of the Stinger, at the end of the Rogue's Revenge, they show like Barry running again. It's like Barry's coming back, but again in the same costume. It just looks like Wally. So I'm like,
excuse me, Wally has green eyes and Barry has blue eyes.
I thought Wally was just running for some reason, and I'm like, okay.
It looks like if I didn't, like we talk about like comic to be a visual medium.
Yeah.
If without the animation, there's nobody could tell it's fucking Wally. It's not Wally. It's Barry.
That's why like I love Legacies. The worst thing you could do is bring the original person back, because when Barry was dead forever, then if a Flash shows up, it's Wally every time.
Yeah.
For 20 years, it's Wally.
Yeah.
It's just like when you read a comic in the 90s and it's Robin, you're not like, is this Dick Grayson? You're like, no, I know it's
that's
Tim
a
Drake.
good point.
And that's one of the but when you retcon it, that's when it gets really confusing. That's when it's like, oh well, now there's 3 or 4 Flashes, and that's when it's dumb.
Yeah, most of the time when we talk about dumb stuff, it's usually not like a unless we defend it, we say, no, this dumb stuff is actually genius. It's genius that this guy got raised by gorillas. Unless it's like something like that, it's usually just some editors trying to force something that wasn't meant to be there.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think we have talked enough about the Flash. You guys have. I still have way more to say, but I will not bore you anymore. He just runs so fast, guys.
Yeah,
really does.
He's got to run faster.
He's like the Sonic of comics.
Oh boy.
So we'll be back. We're not weekly next time, so we're taking a week off, right? That's what the schedule says.
Yes.
We're back to bi-weekly.
So
thanks. So we'll see you next time. So thank you for listening to Divisive Issues. I've been Just signing off this fucked up year.
I exploded a baby.
I've been putting another Ryan in time hell.
And I'm Gorilla Grodd on the comms.
Stay in continuity.